Hello, everyone. Welcome to wow, I have no idea. The special meeting. That is.
Do we have to begin?
They're
the packet.
What was that?
They're in the second page of the packet.
Oh.
The event. Yeah.
Thanks. Oh, I have that over. Okay, sorry. Welcome to the special meeting of the Police Accountability Board. Also what we call our annual retreat. We will be discussing our annual plan for the year. To access the meeting, literally go from a Mac, PC, iPad, iPhone, and Android device with the URL in the packet. You don't wish for your names to appear on the screen, use the drop down menu and click on rename to rename yourself as anonymous. To request to speak, use the list icon on the screen. Join by phone, dial the number of the packet in the meeting and the number in the packet. If you wish to comment during the public comment portion of the agenda, press star 9 and wait to be recognized. We usually do a land acknowledgement, but I'm still trying not to speak as much as I'm talking so much. So it is in the packet. Everyone who's interested. So with that, we'll go to the agenda item number 1, also order and roll on it. All right, sure.
Okay, so roll call, board member Catalina. Here. Board member Lethwich. Here. Board member Buswell Charcon.
Here.
Board member Wells, we were notified prior to today's tenancy and emergency won't be able to attend. And board member Vice Chair Wilson just contacted me on her way up. Board Chair Cayetano.
Here.
Okay. So with that, Chair, we have 4 out of 6 members present currently. We have a quorum. And please note that right now all votes have to be 4 to pass.
Okay, thanks, Director. Thanks, we're going to go to agenda item 2, approval of the agenda. Are there any revisions to our agenda? It's on page 7.
I move that we approve the agenda.
Okay, great. Let's go to agenda item 3, public comment.
Okay, board member, Chair Cayetano, we don't have any community members present in the room right now. So we're gonna go ahead and pull any of our participants that are online. If you are attending this through a Zoom meeting, please raise your hand icon. And we'll go ahead and allow you up to 3 minutes to speak. And for the record, it's 10:08. Vice Chair Wilson is in attendance. So George Lippman, we have now recognized you.
Yes, good morning. I am a member of the Berkeley Human Welfare and Community Action Commission, but speaking only on my own behalf, and co-editor of Berkeley's free online social justice newspaper, berkeleyspeaks.org, and a former member of the Police Review Commission. I'd like to urge that in the next year, the PAB reconsider all elements of the mutual aid relationships that the Berkeley Police Department has with outside agencies. I'll say why. In 2025, Berkeley's done fairly well in deepening the sanctuary city protocols. We still have challenges and disagreements about issues like the contract with flock safety. But overall, we've learned that collaboration with immigration enforcement makes us less secure in Berkeley, not more secure. Now it's become clear that our national emergency is much broader than the sphere of immigration. The ATF, Drug Enforcement Agency, and other agencies are now focused on immigration and political retribution. Homeland Security funds and helps coordinate NCRIC, the Northern California Regional Intelligence Center, of which BPD is a member. Without being rhetorical, it's a fact that the entire national administration has become weaponized, politicized, and corrupted. In Minnesota, the FBI is now investigating both Governor Walz and the mayor of Minneapolis. The feds have indicated that California and New York State are next in line for a Minnesota style assault. All these relationships must be evaluated independently to understand how to mitigate these risks. I would be happy to share my research with the board and to help this effort in any way. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other community members on Zoom that are interested in providing public comment? Please raise your hand icon. Not at this time, Chair, we don't have anyone else.
Thanks, Director. We're gonna go to the bulk of our agenda, which is agenda item 4, since I don't believe we're done with the department here, finally. So the general plan for today is to start by looking backward and evaluating what we did in the past year, and to also reflect on the metrics that we set at the last annual retreat meeting. I don't know, Director, did you were you able to provide us with those in the packet?
The notes from last year's thing?
Yeah.
Not sure if
Okay.
we're into this packet.
Okay, and then hopefully coalesce around some annual recommendations. Since we are in such close proximity to last year, I thought it would be good to at least come up with some draft recommendations for the annual report for 2025. And then we'll talk about our fixed plan before a break, and we'll talk about our performance metrics, potentially the charter requirements. And I think Vice Chair Wilson will lead that section there because she's been working on our manual, and might be a little preview there. And then talk about how it says division of labor, but it really is about how our office, our board can work with the director, and to talk about things that went well last year, but also things that we can improve on this year. And then 2026 is really like a more of a free ranging discussion, but I just wanted to highlight for the board that the last bullet there, that I would encourage you guys to think about your own goals and how they fit into the board's larger goals and vice versa. And then the last part will be mainly a strategy session to figure out how we get from step to step. So that's kind of the overview. Did anyone have any comments on that overview before we jump in?
Well, is it possible to, even if it's not in this packet, is it possible to see can we print out the notes from last year?
Yeah, they're actually an item, I'm looking at the packet now, I didn't have it, but item 4,
Yeah.
or page 9, or 8 and 9.
I think it's 20.
23 in the
Oh,
agenda. Packet.
sorry, I'm looking at the page.
No, 23 is mandatory versus permissive.
So it's not item 4.
Page,
So it's on page 20 and 21. I see. So 2021 we had PAB. Well, we first, we kind of broke down our mandatory duties versus discretionary duties, but then on page 21, it discusses the PAB objectives for 2025. And we didn't really solidify on metrics for 2025. We mainly had objectives. And so we can discuss those. They were good objectives to begin with, and how we could evaluate those in our annual report, and anything else. Should we start with our objectives? Or should we start more high level? Does anyone have more high level discussing 2025? I feel like we could discuss major things that we did just to refresh everyone's memory about things that happened last year. I felt like that would be a decent place to start.
Yeah, I do think reviewing what our objectives were is kind of instructive. I haven't looked at this yet, I apologize, but it's good to know. We set up some objectives, and if we can achieve them. They still could be good objectives.
Yeah.
But I'm fine to start with high level stuff. I'm not saying we need to start there.
Sure. And director, please, feel free to participate in the discussion if you feel like you have anything to add to. But let's do high level things and talk about the objectives and then move on from there. Does anyone have anything that they felt like they worked on or recall from this year that was particularly noteworthy?
Can we also, maybe before we do that, talk about who came on the board and left, and for Josh, for example, when did you come on? And we lost
Yeah.
a couple of people. So
Like what happened last?
it'd be good to know what happened to the board composition, kind of. You came on when?
I think it was June. I can't tell, it was either May or June.
And who did we lose?
Two people, I
Two
think.
people, right?
Did Alex leave in 2025?
Alex.
I think he left. Director, do you know?
Yes, it was in
2025. So we lost Alex, we lost David, and
When did we lose Grant?
Oh, that was before.
2024. Well, he left when he was elected.
The end of
November
2024.
Can't
Which are
Yes, it's much area, so that's
Yeah.
3, right?
we lost 3 people, right?
Okay.
Um,
And gained Randy and Josh, right?
Randy,
Randy Wells, huh?
did he join this year? No.
I think he did, didn't he? Randy Wells,
might have been at the very beginning. Yeah, it was after. Yes, it was after January.
Yeah.
Because he wasn't involved in the elections last year. I don't think. Was he?
Is Jose gonna be here?
It was not today.
whose opponent was Randy?
Humber.
The other thing I think would be, not to get us off track really, but it could be interesting when we have the list of. It would be nice to know. The pointers
Yeah,
from council,
that's a good.
next
That's a
each
good.
person's name,
Sure.
Yeah,
can we do that?
Yeah,
Because I always get
that's a good
confused,
idea.
who's who and.
you need it now or you need it?
No.
Yeah, we have the roster.
Yeah, so we had 3 people leave and probably 2 people who came on.
Okay,
Randy and then Josh.
Yeah. well, one of the accomplishments, if you can call it an accomplishment, is the ongoing effort to get our regulations. I mean, that's been a heavy lift and that's been throughout.
It's also a challenge.
It's also a
accomplishment
challenge.
and a challenge.
So it fills all boxes.
Yeah.
And it's also right there on our stated objectives for the year was to finish it.
You're right, but we have gotten pretty through the internal stuff, so anyway, that's one accomplishment, I would say.
Well, do you wanna just like, do you remember where you were at the beginning of last year, like in January, you said? And do you remember how the cadence started in January?
We began talking to the current negotiator in March, I believe. So in January, I believe nothing was happening, correct me if I'm wrong, Julie. I think that was the gap, between one negotiator and the other. I'm not sure when exactly Laura was hired, but we began our discussions, Julie and I, without the other insider stakeholders in March.
Right. And do you remember like how many meetings, like if you had to estimate, like in the beginning of the first half of the year and then you've obviously picked it up in the last half?
Well, we had a lot throughout the year. I
I
don't
mean,
know.
I did that timeline and I don't know whatever happened with that. I did a very detailed timeline of how this all happened. And I get, it's been so many years that I kind of lose track and so many meetings, but I know that for a very long time, we were saying, we need more meetings. Why is this taking so long? So I don't think we started in March, Kitty. I think it was the year before we started in March. Because last spring, they were saying, we'll be done by June.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry, we started in March of 24.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, good catch.
Yeah,
Uh,
because we were supposed to be done recording and progress by last June.
and in the last 6 months, or I don't know how long, we've been having, like this month, we have 5 meetings. And there are sometimes 3 hours. And, so at the beginning, I think it wasn't quite so many, but we probably averaged 3 or 4 a month.
Right.
So and then our former chair too left.
Oh, and shit, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously.
That was this past year.
Yeah, 2025.
So anyway, that's just a list of accomplishments is we did a lot of meetings. Yeah. And have tried very hard to be true to the PAB objectives in those regulations. And yeah. We we did research and did a number of reports on, I believe, chime in folks, but didn't we write a report to the Public Safety Committee of Council on the possible rescission of the military equipment
Right.
ordinance?
I mean, it would have been good to have a list of all these things
Yes,
for today for us to review, because there has been a lot of all the submissions to council.
we spent quite a bit of time discussing at our meeting the redundancy in the 2 reports that had to be done and how it could be made into one without rescinding the ordinance. And we recommended that to the Public Safety Committee and so forth. So
Yeah, I think even before that, which happened in July, we were reviewing the control department report, which came out of the ordinance, and we had discussions with the department about reviewing the LRAD devices.
yeah,
And we requested records, and we had a long discussion with them after they decided not to give it to us. And we considered at a meeting subpoenaing them for the records so that we could complete our review. And we decided that we would do it next year if they refuse. And then now the ordinance might be rescinded, which would then no longer give us a basis to do that. So I think that that's part of the context as well. And to me, it wasn't a coincidence that after we had that public discussion about, well, maybe it's not the best decision to do it this year because they submitted it to council and the council was already going to decide it. What's the point in moving forward? If they're just this council's gonna approve it anyway. Then we should do it next year, or we have more of an opportunity to. And I don't think it's coincidence that like a month after that they decided to propose to rescind it. So even though it's not really the stated objective of what's happening, but I think that was all happening in the beginning of the year as well. It was kind of a surprise because we're gonna the second half of this conversation, like what things to focus on, but something like that came kind of out of nowhere, where they proposed a rescission, and we kind of have to react to it. So I also divide what we do into proactive versus reactive in some ways. We also two other things that I was focused on at the beginning of the year were the MOUs. I believe that was this year, right? Yeah. We reviewed their MOUs and we pointed out that they were out of compliance with an ordinance, and we worked with them to bring them back into compliance, and it was very. I mean, it was pretty collaborative, and we also recommended to council that they revise the ordinance, tinker with it, so it's not, they don't have to resubmit it every year, because a lot of MOUs have changed, but we also pointed out that there were some MOUs with federal immigration officials that were technically on the books, and those were after our conversation rescinded by the department, so I thought that that was a particularly helpful and it was an area where we were proactive because that's a permissive thing that it's discretionary. But it actually created a real impact in Berkeley. So I was proud of that.
You know, a lot of this stuff, it occurs to me, this would be helpful towards preparation of the annual report. Looking back about everything we did, proactive versus reactive, communications with councils, challenge, because that is what we're talking about here. So presumably this can all be helpful for the drafting of the annual report.
Yes, that's why I wanted to have it now, because they're drafting it now. But also that's why in this conversation we're having the discussion of maybe our potential recommendations for that come out of 2025 for the annual report. We always have recommendations from the PAB, so we can turn to that later. That was the first thing. The second thing, I believe. Okay, now I forgot the second thing that I was thinking of.
Well, I was thinking that you communicated with the chief. I don't know if the chief was your liaison, but about the EIS
Yes,
system. That was this year, right?
yeah,
And I actually was going to ask, where that stands, or to get that any information about what their system is now or what they.
yeah.
What are the objectives?
Yeah, and it's actually, I believe it's really like within the next month, close to operational. And so it's very close, like Q1 operational. And so they're considering a policy right now and they're gonna submit it to us for review. And I think there's gonna be some sort of like pilot program, like to make sure that it's, and then well, the initial thought was there was going to be a pilot. Now I think that they might apply, just roll it out. But I'm gonna have a conversation with Arlo. So it's gonna be February about it. But yes, the council did approve it in, I believe, January.
Approve the contract.
Approved the contract with a contractor that we recommended actually, and it's one that I had researched and we discussed it as a group, and the department invited us to their RFP. Interview vendor process. And there was like three or four vendors, and at the end of the day, we all decided that the best vendor was the one that the PAB recommended. So I thought that was
It's good to highlight.
yeah, a good thing to highlight too.
I know that over the past 2 years, and I don't know whether whether it was in 2025, but we have done collectively quite a bit of research on surveillance technology and various other jurisdictions that have various things like automated license plate readers, fixed cameras, drones, etc., and looking to see crime rates, how they've affected crime rates, and the privacy concerns, the error rate, and those kinds of things. And I know that we have in the past submitted reports on that and recommendations to the Public Safety Committee. Hansel and I were at one such meeting, but I don't believe it was in 2025. But I think in 2025 we continued to have our input on the rollout of these various, most recently the 52 cameras, fixed cameras around the city. So that has been on the agenda for quite a few years, including this past year.
Yeah. I think two things on that, like, one is we submitted, per the surveillance technology ordinance, which gives us, another, and not the, duty to review, proposed use policies for surveillance technologies. We proposed red lines to the council And the council adopted most of them, and it was a very like lively discussion between the council, and it ended up being 9-0 for all but one of our recommendations, and then 5-4 for an additional against an additional recommendation. So
What red lines to what?
the fixed surveillance camera use policy. And that is something that, you know, the department has to submit to us. It's the same process we're following with the drone policy, right? They have to submit a use policy to us, and you know, the interesting thing about what happened at that surveillance thing was, I remember it was a very quick,
Which sir,
the surveillance use policy, the fixed surveillance camera use policy. It was a very quick turnaround because the department provided it to the director and I at the end of June. But submitted it to council simultaneously, so that it went to the Rules and Agenda Committee, I think like the week after, and then, you know, when things get agendized on the council, they get considered, you know, at the Rules and Agenda
Right.
Committee, and they get published in the agenda based on that. And so we only had one meeting to really provide any recommendation, you know, like, and so because like the Brown Act restricts, you know, it was me and Masharia who were like talking about like, well, what sort of proposals we can make. And so we ended up having to delegate after Masharia left to me to write a revision, which is like not ideal, honestly. Like I think as a board, we don't want to function where we're having to like just, and you know, for public transparency's sake, we don't want to have to delegate things to one person to write without, you know, we want to be able to have as final of a draft as possible before we approve it. But because of the way that it was submitted, and because of the lack of our meeting schedule, but also the way there wasn't enough time, it prevented us from doing that. So I think like flagging that for the council as like like the timing of when things are submitted to rules and agenda and how they're agendized, as opposed to when they're submitted to us, like it really affects our advice. That happened multiple times throughout the year, so it's not, it happened with the radio encryption as well. So like, there's a lot of like those examples are like just those are two examples, of there's other examples of that happened with the controlled equipment report too. Like they submitted it before we were able to provide a final recommendation. So I think there's things like that where we can provide a recommendation. So we did the red line and we submitted that. They accepted most of it. It was good. And we also pointed out, I think we were really the first entities in the city to point out Flock, the issues with Flock. And the council at first was like hesitant to listen, but I think by the end of the year, when things became clearer, and it became more of a regional conversation, they really slowed down to listen to us. And so they put that on pause, and they initially they were just inclined to take the department's recommendation, but the scrutiny that we placed on Flock has, I think, really sharpened what is important to the city. And so they're able to make sure that all the data protection and security and is at the level that Berkeley wants, and I think that was important for us too. Another thing that was really like, I mean, we made that decision to focus on Flock as a board after the red lines were submitted as well. So that was kind of like not mandatory at all, really. But that came out of the surveillance that this year.
yeah. Yeah,
Something I think we did is we submitted the report on FIP implementation, and then we worked with the department again collaboratively to modify the reporting requirements for FIP going forward. The department's reporting requirements.
Right.
when was that?
It was last year, I don't remember when. It was presented, remember, initially at the same time that the downtown report went to public.
But it wasn't really presented, wasn't it postponed that way? When I presented the texting scandal report to the Public Safety Committee, you all were lined up to report, but then time was short and so it was postponed. Was that
Yeah.
2025?
Yes. I think the downtown was in March and we did the fair and partial in May.
Okay. So both of those are, I mean, the texting scandal report was big too.
Yeah.
And the FIP. Fair and impartial policing, yeah.
What do you think, what do you think about the process for the texting scandal report and how it was heard? How it was heard to the city? I mean, like, when we have a major report like that,
Yeah.
if there's any recommendation that we can make about ways for it to be heard
Right,
and, you know.
I was wondering if we were going to be talking about challenges at the same time, or whether we're gonna finish talking about our accomplishments.
I wanted to get everything out there,
It's
but
all,
we're
it's just
close to
fine,
the-
yeah, okay,
Oh, you can go there if you.
if I were, if. You know, I was chair of that committee because. Cheryl. Had been chair of it and then resigned, but that wasn't 2025. Anyway. If I were to redo it, I would make it clear. I thought it was clear for council, but clearly they're only gonna look at the end where we say. Recommendations 1, 2, 3, 4. And we had a whole set of recommendations for policy tweaks that they didn't even look at because that. And you can't assume, I guess, bottom line, you can't assume anything, you just have to. Be, and obviously, and that's.
You're talking about how a report is.
How we
structured.
report, how we make recommendations or present reports and their recommendations to council. One can't assume anything about, well, they're gonna read beyond this, you know.
So the need for what, an executive summary or having the recommendations up front or something?
Or upfront, but at some point, making it clear, not just in the body of the report, but at the end or at the beginning, all of the recommendations, not just some major ones. I mean, I think what happened there was we made the recommendations to council, maybe 3 of them, which were not the main recommendations in the report, because the main recommendations in the report were changes to policies. And they only looked at recommendations for council. And not, they didn't say, okay, we affirm that these changes of policy are important or anything, sending it back to the department to make those changes. They only looked at the things that were listed under, so my point is, I take some, you know, whatever. It should have been done more. I shouldn't have assumed anything in terms of reading all the different recommendations.
Maybe it's also being explicit about our asks to council.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
So. Your question was. What about the process? What about the process? Well, that's one thing, we just have to be more explicit and not assume anything in terms of reading through different recommendations that aren't listed specifically at the end or the beginning. Here's the recommendation.
So this is kind of lessons learned, right?
Yeah,
I don't know if that's on the agenda, but isn't.
I do not know, I'm gonna say one more thing about that. I do not know if it would have made any difference. Because I did not feel that council was ready to hear recommendations, particularly on something that had happened 2 years before, 3 years, whatever it was. They were not ready to hear that. However it had been presented, I don't know, things would have gone differently. But that's how it worked out, and, they basically rejected our recommendations after 2 years of hard work on it. And substituted a rather toothless resolution saying, we respect both the department and the PAB.
Before we keep going in challenges, I think it would be helpful to go back over, just quickly to go back over our stated objectives and make sure we hit each one of them. Like, we haven't touched on the first one yet.
Yeah, that was like my suggestion today.
Which was the first?
Achieve full PAB staffing
Oh,
and
yes.
enhance community participation. Your strengthen stakeholder engagement. I don't know, Hansel, if you want to say anything on
Yeah, sorry, where,
We're on page 20.
Page 21, back to the objectives.
These objectives, like the first one, achieving full staff.
I mean, I think part of the annual forecast, right, is the budget freeze, right? And
Yeah.
the full stuff, so like, do you wanna talk about that first one?
yeah,
And the community stakeholder piece.
okay, so right before you arrived, remember, we had a hiring freeze.
Right.
Imposed upon us, and there was, I think. There were some issues with how that was carried out from my purview, because one, it came out of nowhere, so the city manager controls or is in charge of most of the city departments were independent. And when he was assessing the budget situation, he, one of the strategies was to put a hiring freeze because of the shortfall that we had. The council, he can't ask us, the independent charter officers, to do a hiring freeze, so the council said, well, we want all charter officers to explore it. And that was the ask, and we explored it, our office, and we actually, the city manager had alerted to us that this was probably where he was going. He said, but I can't touch, your department, but I just wanna let you know where we are as a city. So when he had previewed that to me, I started analyzing, and we really couldn't, we weren't in a position to have a hiring freeze. And I gave the council memo to let them know why that would be a challenge for us. But the ask was to explore what could be done to save money, but then they imposed a hiring freeze. So that was, it caught me off guard, because they were telling me, look for like ways to save money, but then, oh no, we're putting a hiring freeze. And the other thing that I think was problematic with that is because the city manager has a framework where they could do exemptions on certain positions, like if it's critical to the mission, and or if it's charter bound, this, that, the other. I told council, I don't think we should have a hiring freeze. If we're required to do one, let's model our system, the framework, to the city managers. And these positions, the additional investigator, the admin, should be exempt for these reasons. But none of that was really responded to, and the council just said, we're gonna freeze these two positions. So I think it created a situation where was confusing, because it was like a co-management sort of decision that I don't know that the city manager was exposed to, because he decided to do a higher freeze on his end. But one was imposed upon us without that dialogue. So that has impacted our ability to support the PAB members. We were often involved in committee meetings, and we haven't been as available. We're still able to provide support whenever we can. So full staffing, I think, from a office perspective, is really important, but also having the 9 board members plus the alternate, I think, is really important for you guys.
So when you set this objective, was it about ODPA staffing as well as just having a full PAB? Cause it just says the chief full PAB staffing, so I'm not
I
sure.
think it was about board members.
It wasn't about board members, it was actually about PAB. Staff support, which comes from ODPA.
Got it.
We had put in a request for an analyst or an additional position to support the PAB itself. Cause one of the questions has been, who staffs us?
Right.
It's technically that, as I understand, is not exactly in ODPA's mandate. So we're kind of this board that doesn't necessarily have any staff.
Right, so that's what we meant there.
That's my recollection of what we meant there.
Although we probably didn't have a full board
We've
then,
never, since the PAB is established, we've never had
I'm
9,
sure that was part of it.
yeah. So both things. We need both things to get the work done.
I just saw somebody walking.
I think that's a, Did you wanted me to address the community engagement piece of it?
Yeah, could you just talk briefly about anything community oriented that your office led and happened in 2025?
Yeah, we put forth a relatively ambitious calendar of events. Which we're dialing it back after this conversation, and we'll present something at the next board meeting. But we were trying to hit like the major holidays and events of significance. Black History Month, Hispanic Heritage Month. So we did a couple of events throughout the year. One was where we had an immigration related conversation with the city council. They recommitted to the sanctuary status of the city, so we had a conversation. We invited the city attorney to come present. Chair was there, and other community organizations. It wasn't well attended, but it was an intimate conversation. We did have a hybrid setup for that. We also had a visioning session early in the year, and that one was in recognition also Black History Month. And we invited community members and partners to come out and talk to us about what they envision out of a police accountability program and how we can better interact with community members. And our DEI officer, Rex Brown, was there for that. And we also had a consultant that came to facilitate that conversation. And those are the two immediate ones that I'm thinking of. But one of the things that we've been working with, which we introduced the few meetings back, we partnered with the University Social Sector Solutions, and they are an agency within the university that provides a group of graduate students. It's project based, and one of the reasons we're partnered with them is to help us come to develop a very strategic outreach plan and also social media presence. So this past year, we piloted with LinkedIn, relatively low hanging fruit. I've been managing mostly. I tapped into the staff. We've gotten engagement in that, but we want to expand beyond that. But we want to do sustainable. We have limited resources, so we want to be mindful of that.
What is happening with those students? I remember they came to present to us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're on the 23rd, we're having the kickoff session with the university. And then the team is there, we gave them a lot of the documents, so they're reviewing that. So within the next few weeks, we're formally gonna start that.
To do what?
So one of their main mandates is to assess our outreach strategies and kind of doing even like a SWOT analysis of where we are in terms of our engagement opportunities and where we can go. I've gone to council now 3 budget cycles, requested a dedicated outreach person, but there isn't that support there, and I doubt that this year there'll be that support given the budgetary conversations. But they're going to look at that, and they're also going to help us carry out our community survey that we have talked about.
Okay. I think then Next one was EIS, we talked about that.
Sorry, one thing on community participation, in the annual report. Director,
Yes.
in the annual report, when we note, I think in our last annual report, we noted the average attendance at our meetings or something like that. I think it would be helpful in the next annual report to talk about which were the most well-attended meetings. I don't know if, I remember that for the one that I was not here for, actually, we had about like 25 speakers for the conversation on when the encampment week happened. That was the most by like 5 times that I had ever seen. So I think that is significant, for the council to know about, like, when the community was most engaged with our board. That's the only thing, that's the only note I have. I'm sorry.
I was just saying, I think we already touched on EIS. And the next one has to do with the operations manual, which did not get done until. You know, that is moving along, it's actually on your agenda for adoption next week. Catalog and prioritize pending policy reviews before the PAB. So we definitely did work with ODPA staff to start keeping a running list of our policy reviews. We get that in each agenda packet now. I don't know that we prioritize them, we did drop some.
I think we did prioritize,
Dropping them.
well, and then prioritize the ones we didn't drop,
Okay.
yeah.
We had to drop them because. I mean, like, one of the rationales was that the hiring freeze and staffing was affecting our ability, and also our staffing was affecting our ability to, address every single policy review that.
Well, I think more importantly, or certainly as important, is the fact that we were spending all of our time, Kitty and I, on the regulations.
Yeah.
Rather than doing policy reviews, which personally I find more rewarding and more interesting and more important, not more important, but I felt that those fell away because all of our time was sucked into doing the regulations, and because we don't have a full board, there just aren't enough people to do the work.
That reminds me that we submitted the vehicle pursuit policy recommendation in
Yes.
February.
Yes, I was going to add that I was someone who was responsible for 2 policy reviews.
Yeah.
And I did my worked with Jose on that. Communicated with the department and have not heard back. So
Okay.
we have done a number of policy reviews that are sometimes in limbo.
What do you mean by not hearing back? Like, did you have an initial conversation, or like what?
We wanted to initiate the conversation.
And they didn't respond to you at all?
Not me, Jose.
They responded to Jose.
That's what
Well, I mean, that's an interesting thing to think about like, when we assign individual board members, one of the pieces of feedback we've gotten from the department is like, it's hard to coordinate with every single person who's doing them. And so if we assign a policy to an individual board member, maybe we should think about how we communicate with the department about which things to be like, who to be speaking with and which things to prioritize. Just like for the future, like.
Yes, but I've also been told that individual board members should not be the ones to communicate with the department, that it should be coordinated.
Yeah.
So I don't know which is which, but all I know is we have done some policy reviews that are sort of waiting for completion.
Maybe there could be a process where the chair provides notice to the department that this has been assigned to so-and-so. So, be advised that in the future you will receive communications from that person or something. And I was just thinking, I know I spent a ton of time on the body worn camera policy. And I don't think it was last year, but just talking about the way policy reviews went, met with people in the department, spent a lot of time, but that had to be put on hold because of the regulations. Because we put that, you know, that
That's
was
part of
a huge piece of the regulations. And so that one was put on hold, even though I had spent a ton of time, so. Nothing has happened with that either.
If I could just step back to number one for a quick second, and that is that. A lot of us have spent quite a bit of time, and I think we can list it as an accomplishment, communicating with council members. You know, it talks about communicating with, getting stakeholder engagement. And I think a number of us have communicated in different ways with different council members. Either for a particular issue or just to make contact. So regular communication with council members, I think, is something that we've been doing.
And I think that could be a goal too, you know, to continue that and to encourage board members to communicate regularly with their own.
At least with their,
appointer.
yeah,
Yes. Cause I'm not sure how often that happens.
yeah.
Last thing on policy reviews is that in the last annual report. There was like a focus on. The official policy reviews that we had taken up as there was, you know, like through the normal process and
Mhm.
the list of things that we would review at the beginning. A lot of those don't fit in that category. You know, like, for example, the. You know, doing things related to the controlled equipment report or the fixed surveillance policy, like those weren't an official policy review that the board took on. It was like something that came out as organically, so. If we just numerically quantify policy reviews that the board took up, like. We somehow have to find a way to capture that with other work.
Cause those are mandatory, it's the mandatory reviews, right? So we did some things because we're obligated to do charter, or when we receive things from council versus.
Yeah.
It's kind of the proactive versus reactive, or reacting to council versus responding to a member of the public.
Yeah.
Versus generating our own policy reviews,
Yeah.
right? So there's lots of different
Three
sources.
buckets, yeah.
Right, right.
On this objectives, the. Number 5 is kind of my idea. I remember at the last meeting. And. I. Think it was aspirational. And I don't think it's a good objective unless there's a substance behind it. Like. To reach out to, for example. Create relationships with use of force policy experts, academics in the field and things like that. That would be a good objective. But just like having a network for the sake of having a network, like it's hard to maintain that as a board member, you know, so I. That's my like feedback to myself.
Although we did have that great relationship with,
Yes,
Chester Boudin,
yes,
who came to speak on,
yes.
was that the. Was that the, no,
It wasn't
What-
drones. He
Yeah.
commented a little bit on drones, I remember, but it was.
was it
something
about the
else.
surveillance technology?
it was with the CBSA, right?
And AI,
So that's an important relationship. I think that's an accomplishment.
We had a partner for the vehicle pursuit policy,
Correct,
a few partners, so there,
Yeah.
it didn't completely fall off.
correct.
No.
And I think it's a worthy goal. I mean, I think it's important.
I do too.
Okay.
And when there are things that are being taken to council that we want to make recommendations on, if we know of academics in the field, experts in the field who may have some feedback on that. Some of us have communicated with those people and they've written letters and so forth. So yeah, on specific topics.
If I may, I would also say like, I think there's something, it might be worth it to strengthen the relationship with the other oversight bodies. Especially when there's like policies that impact us, like Oakland had a very robust conversation last year about vehicle pursuits. And we border them, so it might be situations where when we talk MOUs, maybe we ask them to, what is your stand on this? And then incorporating that formally into our analysis somehow.
I did talk with got information from them, but we didn't have like a formal conversation, which would have been good. Which makes sense for me, which is, right, that's a good suggestion.
Might be nice to have like quarterly meetings with the other oversight bodies, you know, kind of formalize our relationship, just to make sure it happens.
That would be good. In our extra time.
The last thing on here was the regulations, which we discussed. I don't know if there's any more
Not really.
to add on that.
So I think we were going further into our challenge.
Yeah. We're still on a good track here. I do want to talk about challenges, but I want to be able to merge the conversation of challenges with recommendations. We have like 15 minutes on our agenda for this last part. So challenges, but also potential recommendations for next year, which can grow organically out of a discussion of challenges.
I think we've already hit on some of them, the hiring freeze, the regulations, inefficient process. And also council having hearings on matters before we've had time to review them.
Right.
One other one is the fact that the chief and the city manager almost overwhelmingly reverse our conclusions when we hear complaints, and I don't know the stats on that, but that's certainly a challenge.
They reverse our sustained.
Right.
Yeah. Do we have challenges with record? Did we, do you know any stats off the top of your head on the deadline, like how we can, I don't know, be cognizant of deadlines for the complaint process more, like what sort of things that we can adjust?
You mean just like a calendaring system?
Not calendar, I mean, like, it's more like format wise. I don't know how many. We had to close some things because of the administrative, burden on the office, but there were some instances where, for example, like we needed to give notice more, or we have the instance where there's like a weird charter alignment with how much time we have to give the city manager.
Right.
I don't know if there's anything we can adjust on our end, or if the manual touches on this at all, but.
And one of the challenges for us, is sometimes and I'm not saying that it's the one thing, but part of the story has been the records. And how, in what time frame we get it, so we have been very lenient, and because we still continue to do other stuff, but there are times when we go past the 10 days that the department has, and they're supposed to ask if they need more time. Sometimes they don't do that. And that has, when we receive records late, that shifts the whole process for us. So which is why we been more on top of giving the nudges to the department. But if there was a conversation where we could have direct access to certain things like body worn camera, I think that would really assist with being able to go through some of these cases in a faster timeline.
Would you be able to quantify in the, not right now, maybe, but for the annual report? It would be really helpful for an Excel spreadsheet of like. When you requested it, what day and how many days passed until they actually provided the information?
Yeah.
And out of those instances, how many were beyond 10 days?
Yeah.
And by what measure?
Yeah.
Because they have been very close adherence to the timeline, and if we can't go one day beyond what is the ceiling for under the charter, right? 190 days, you're done. 240 days, it times out immediately. And so if they are delaying on the front end, providing an access. Then that changes the calculus.
Yes.
Obviously, there are other factors too, but like that is an important factor, but it's hard for, I think, me, maybe the board, but me. To understand how much of a factor that is without knowing that information.
Yeah, no, and we can provide that, because we do track that. I also do think there wasn't enough consideration for how short of a timeline we actually have. The state code allows a year for the. We're at 121.95.
Sorry.
Of 1 year to impose discipline on the officer. So like we're in Berkeley, we have a very condensed timeline, which is 121.95, 240 to drop that deadline, so they don't, we're already challenged there. But then when these little factors, and we can compile that report for you.
And do you have timelines for? Like goals, you get a complaint within X days internally, what should be happening when the officer interview should take place?
Yeah.
Because it seems like there's just been so much delay and so many last minute things, and I don't know. You know, what your own internal processes are.
We have investigative plans for the cases that we have. Sometimes though, again, is with multiple officers, multiple body on camera. We really wanna make sure we're reviewing all of it before we bring the officers in. So that I think, and there's been other cases too where we've requested. And we find out through reviewing the body on camera, there should be another video. And we ask the department, hey, we identified at least one other video, and then they're like, oh yeah, and then they send us more information, but. So we're tracking those kind of issues too, but
Well, how soon do you ask for the body worn camera footage?
oh, that the records request is done as soon as within 2 weeks of receiving the complaint, we try to assess if there's jurisdiction that we have, and then we request those records, and they're pretty. They're standard, but then we request like all the relevant records of the incident, so. One of the things too, we found out that perhaps we weren't being. Specific enough, but there's a certain use of force report we have not been getting, even though we've asked for all records. So now we're even looking back at what we have received from the department, whether it has been accurate or not based on what we requested.
Cause maybe 2 weeks is too long.
Well,
If you read a complaint, sometimes you can tell. This has, no merit.
yeah,
But I would just think if it could be a priority to look at it, and if it seems at all, that unlikely that you're gonna admin close it for lack of a prima facie case. Immediately ask for all the records, 'cause
Yeah,
even
no.
2 weeks, given the compressed timelines for everything, maybe even 2 weeks is too long. Since they're being slow, right, to respond.
I think we should pull this conversation back up, so if we're talking about something that's a challenge or we're gonna put it in a report. You asked for this spreadsheet of how many are beyond 10 days. I think we also need to make clear how many investigations were seriously impacted, how we define that. By the timeline issue, like I know one, we did not move, we had to close it and not move it forward. I don't know, that's just because I have a recency bias, like it relatively recently happened. So I don't know how many we just blew the timeline, or because we were going to, we didn't do X. But that would be good to have, and then maybe for 2026 goals, Julie, to your point, that could be a goal of really working on. Trying to modify the process to better accommodate the timeline.
Right.
Is that something
That's like a 2026 goal.
Yeah,
later on?
Well, yeah, I just don't think as
Yeah,
planning session is the time to like workshop that in great detail, like what that's gonna look
no,
like.
but all the conversations, sometimes this all gets mixed,
Yeah.
whether it's.
yeah.
Accomplishments, challenges, recommendations, and a report. But I hear what you're saying, but I think that it's an important thing to consider for a goal for 2026.
In one quick note about timelines, which we don't really have a visibility on, your other charter function is to review, cases that. When a community member is dissatisfied with internal affairs. Uh, that's also very dependent on when the community member receives. Their disposition from the department, and that we don't really know when it's only IA. We're not sure when they're receiving it, but we had at least two during my tenure here, the last, 3 years, we had two community members that requested that review. But because they got their disposition letter so late, it timed out and we couldn't do a review. So we don't know to what extent that's a broader issue, but I think that would be helpful to have visibility on that.
Is that something that can be fixed in the regs?
I don't know, well, it's more an enforcement thing is. If the IA is given. Their disposition with enough time for them to
Okay.
request a review process.
Alright,
Okay. I think, Vice Chair Wilson's suggestion about investigations impacted by the timeline would be helpful to measure. Because it would give, like, those are the types of metrics that if you track them, can lead to changes in the charter, right? Timing, and without a continued metric that tracks across the years, right? How many have been impacted by this timeline and for what reasons, if you could break down the reasons, those are the types of things that can actually lead to change because they'll see a pattern. So just flagging that in terms of like metrics to track internally. We really only have 5 minutes, and I don't think we're gonna really get to all the recommendations for the annual report, but I want us to be able to throw out as many as we possibly could think about in the next 5 minutes.
but I don't understand what this category means, recommendations for how the annual report is written,
No.
or what? What does it
In
mean?
our annual report, we write recommendations to council about our, based on our experience for the last year.
Yeah, I don't think we're ready for that yet.
So,
So one of them that we talked about earlier was the timing of the submission of items to council and their referrals to us and how that plays out. I think we were pretty like vocal about it throughout the year, but putting that in paper is helpful. That's my suggestion. There's like a structural issue there, I think. Also a structural issue with like the way that policies are submitted to the PAB. I mean, under our charter, they're submitted 30 days after implementation. And I think that what we found is that we have more of an impact when they're submitted to us 30 days before.
oh yeah,
Like,
Because we're able to provide, like our position and to provide, our perspective, and that can be baked into the policy in the same way that the council hears it at the same time before they decide. And I was listening to a prior council meeting, and actually it was Mayor Adagian who mentioned, then Mayor Adagian, who mentioned at the 2024 annual report presentation, so 2 years ago, that he thought submitting policies 30 days before implementation made way more sense than 30
well,
days.
that's the way we always did it with the PRC and the prior chief. We always received it in advance.
Yeah,
So, but that's not what the charter says.
right.
So-
No, it's not what it says, and we've been asking for the courtesy,
Right.
and I think it promotes more collaboration, right? So I think, recognizing that it's not in the charter, I think that is another recommendation.
That council encourage the
Yes.
department
Yes,
to,
yeah. 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 Or like, and there's also like encouraging council to refer or making up the PAB if it hasn't been considered before implementation. Unless there's like some sort of exigence or nonsense, you know what I mean?
yeah.
But those are like two things that I thought about. Maybe a couple more minutes, is there anything that anyone, without like having to get into a discussion, is there any like recommendations that you would have for, based on our experience last year?
For the annual report.
Yes,
Yeah.
for the 2025.
Can I say one thing that I find
Sure.
strange?
Yeah.
Which is just that I get that it's part of our or our charter, but the trends on vehicle and pedestrians drop stops feel so strange to me in the annual report from the limited meetings that I've been to, albeit because we never talk about this during our meetings. So it just kind of feels like it's almost like a throwaway. I would understand more if it was something that was like a regular topic of discussion, but it just feels like we have this obligation to do this thing, which is totally untethered to what we actually spend our meetings on.
That's what, and that's the department stops. Is supposed to, I'm not looking at the same page. I don't
Oh, I'm
have
looking
it.
at page 26.
Yeah, I don't have it.
BPD trends and patterns in vehicle.
Right, why should we be putting, I agree. Why?
But it does say that
It's in the charter,
it's
right?
in the charter,
Right.
But you're saying we don't talk about it as a board.
right? It just feels like it's a weird thing for us to include in our annual report. When, at least the things I've been to,
Because the charter says we have to.
because the charter says we have to, so I don't know, I mean, I guess I bring it up, like, it might just be that we have to continue to do this, and it is what it
But
is.
we could talk about it.
We could talk about it, yeah.
It could be something that we decide to do going forward. I mean, I think it's a fair point.
Yeah, I think so too.
We can keep a running list of proposed charter changes, but.
Well, right.
That time comes, yeah.
I mean, well, I guess I thought about it because Chair made the point about getting data to inform, how much time, I can't remember what the time matter was that you were talking about earlier, but it could be the same thing, like either we think maybe this is something that we decide we recommend is removed from our charter, or we take it on and we just spend more time on it, or we just.
Right, because those are
keep it
two different things. I mean, an ongoing list of charter revisions versus we have to do it, so let's talk about it so that at least it feels.
Page is it on?
I was on page 26.
Yeah, I hear that. It's a good point.
Yeah,
This is a good point. I think, the way that these things would come to us throughout the year is through an analysis of what is on the transparency hub, which it takes labor, staff time, because they don't publish. Do they publish quarterly, Director? Their stop data?
They do it on a month?
Yeah, they publish it on a monthly basis.
Um,
Yeah, so it's updated.
in a report?
Not in a report, the raw data.
You have to pull.
The raw data.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not a report. So to put it in a report format for the board the public to understand, it requires that time to like really. So if we have a request, might not be monthly, but we could figure out a way to do it more frequently than we do right now.
Right.
Okay,
I don't wanna get ahead of myself, but a device. Ask sometimes like our division of labor, because it might not always be clear to the board what we do. Part of the challenge this past year has been like redistributing work, but that is actually one of the things Saeed and I have been talking about, like doing these, and other oversight agencies do a good kind of the snapshot of the month. This is what we saw in trends. The only thing, and I don't think we were suggesting that it isn't important, but that I think it's from a historical perspective. We have noted disparities in, disproportionality, so I think that, the council was entrusting the board as the oversight body to report out on these things, or on these trends. That maybe to give a different perspective than maybe what the police is giving, so that's why I think it made its way to the charter without knowing the full history.
I do wanna stay somewhat true to our agenda, so we might have to move on from recommendations. I think that potentially at our next meeting, we can open up space to, if there's any. Just like, if we continue to talk about it, we can get closer and closer to recommendations as opposed to having to figure it out all at once. But if any, unless there's an objection, I'll move on. The second part of our agenda here, just so we can stay closer to the time here. So at 11:15, it's 2026 activities plan. Part 1, performance metrics, charter requirements and mandatory duties, and then the division of labor. I think the director was kind of getting into the division of labor piece already there. I feel like Vice Chair Wilson, you might be the person to lead the section, what do you think?
That's fine, but kind of looking at it, thinking about it now, I'm not sure it's in the best order. Cause
The 1, 2, and 3, or the first section? Is that bullets?
well, like, I think we don't need to be so wedded to the structure of the sentence. Because
Yeah.
we should identify our metrics once we say what we want to do. So I don't think we should start out with the metrics. And I'm not sure where this goes, that's why I was kind of quiet in the last section. So I'm gonna say it here, but I don't know where it goes. So I think one of our biggest challenges is relevancy. And feeling like there's value in what we're doing, that is being experienced by others beyond ourselves. And so we have a challenge with relevancy, certainly with respect to the personnel investigations, and we touched upon that, and I'm not sure what to do about that. I think the places where we've demonstrated the most strength has been in some of the things you've already touched on, but it's been this, like, the policy work, I'll just put it in that umbrella. Primarily the mandatory policy reviews, so things that are actually that we have to take up and review, and or we're asked to weigh in by council. I think that's where we have the potential to demonstrate the most value and be most impactful, I would say. So for me, I'm just thinking, to the drones, it's gonna come to us. I think we will. The flock, obviously, we were. The sort of controlled equipment, yeah, and if it's to get the thing rescinded. But we are, I think, being impactful, and that's important to me. And I think it's important thinking about the long-term viability of this board and people wanting to join it, like, we need to make a difference. So I guess I would say for me, thinking about 2026, it's really kind of leaning into that. So Josh, I think you mentioned talking to council about pushing the department to send things to us in advance of implementation.
Yeah.
But then you also mentioned council referring things to us.
Yeah.
So I think there's something that could be done about a real structure where things come to council with a recommendation from the department and from us concurrently.
Yeah.
And that becomes institutionalized as a process. I think that would be very valuable. It's like we're almost like a separate independent staff support to council in a way. We're independent, but we work up issues so that you get the department's perspective, which is in line with the city manager's perspective, but you also get the perspective of the Independent Oversight Commission, and you're gonna have both before you make key decisions, right?
So, and that assumes you can't collaborate in advance. That
Yeah.
You always have to have two
No,
sides.
you may not have two sides, you may have a joint that comes together.
Ideally, it would be.
But in order to get there, you have to back away from that, there's gotta be a process, right? And that part, I think, for 2026, for me, would be a really valuable use of our time to try to work up, what does that process look like? And what items, what types of things would benefit from flowing through that kind of
And
process?
how much of that is in our control versus how much of that do we have to request from other stakeholders? Right, the institutionalization of that process.
I think council's the one that institutionalizes it. I don't know about how these things work. Obviously, we can't run up against the charter, right? But anything short of the charter can be relatively easily changed. So, I think council is the one that has to institutionalize it.
Well, the charter's the floor and not the ceiling, so if the charter says you have to, that the department has to provide us with policies within 30 days of implementation, that's just the outside, it doesn't mean they couldn't provide it 30 days beforehand. Or, so we don't wanna violate the charter, but it's not like we have to always abide by the outer limits things, and the department doesn't have to either, so council could be encouraging. Could come up with a proposed process which would, one, encourage us to try to collaborate on a single recommendations to council. And if that doesn't work, then that we provide, dual recommendations to council or
But
something.
it has to be, I think that's a great idea, but it has to be institutionalized in such a way. It comes to council sort of almost after the fact, because it's probably been to the Public Safety Committee already. And
Right.
so whatever institutionalization happens means that we have to be not a partner with, but submit simultaneously to all that, I mean, maybe even the Agenda and Rules Committee,
Right.
whether it's gonna be on consent or action or whatever. And if
Right, it has to go way back.
And probably it'll go to the Public Safety Committee, which comes, I don't know how many weeks before it comes to council, so all of that has to be backloaded.
I think the person to work with the most, besides the council, obviously, is the city manager on this, because he's the one who's submitting these items to council. There's also two like procedural postures. One is when it goes to the rules and agenda, and then it goes to council. And there's a question about what the council's gonna do. And there, if it goes in that, then sometimes we have to say, if it's on consent, send it to public safety so that we can weigh in, if we're not weighed in already. Sometimes it's already a recommendation to send to public safety. In which case you will have the opportunity to weigh in. So there's like kind of two different paths that could be.
Yeah. So it's sort of unclear when we would have to be ready with our full recommendation.
It's a good, I think, having a proposal for the city manager would be a great idea.
If I may real quick, like, what exactly is? How formal are you trying to institutionalize it? Is it gonna be a ordinance recommendation or like, what is it? How do you institutionalize it?
I think you'd be encouraging, right? I don't know
I
if
may
you
have some learn.
An informal cultural expectation. I mean. To get an ordinance,
could, it could be guidelines. I don't think it's an ordinance. It would be.
no,
I'm concerned about being too loose that it doesn't have any teeth, like whatever the vehicle is, like. Only also because even when there are sort of tools available to us, then that also creates friction, like when I submitted an item that under the city council's process, I can ask it to go directly to council. That we had never utilized that tool, but that it wasn't received well when we tried it, because it's kind of like forcing. So, and that's when we have a process for it, so I'm just trying to think of what.
Right.
I think it would be a very different process, and I think it would take a time and buy-in to figure out, but I guess the way I view it is, these items come, I see them, they come to public safety, for example, by PPD, right? So you would build a timeline, a structure, and a set of expectations that when BPD brings forward certain things, the things has to be defined, that they will have first come to us, that issue will have come to us. And yeah, we will try to work together, so there's only one sort of consolidated recommendation, but there may not be, there may be two. But that's a very different process than what we have now.
Yeah.
I just think it would both be more efficient than what happens now, because things are like already kind of well down the
Yeah.
path, and then we're scrambling, and then sometimes we are effective, or kind of halting things, and it's off, it's difficult for everybody, so you could avoid that, make it more efficient. But it's a really different process, so I just think for me, like as a goal for 26, I would love to work on it and see if there's any appetite for it, right? Because I do think a challenge, and you touched on this, Katie, with the downtown task force report is, I don't know that this council really wants an oversight board, like,
No.
It's difficult, so I do kind of feel like leaning into where they do seem to find us very helpful, which is having us do some deep work on these complex policy issues. like that makes sense, so that we're not always banging our heads against the wall.
I think that's a great idea. I like that. And that comes under goals for our board, but also, you know, annual report recommendations, right?
Yeah.
Both places.
So, okay, back to this, so that's one thing I think of, charter, so if we're thinking here generally about what we wanna do this year, that's one thing I think, it needs much more wordsmithing to clearly define what we're talking about, but kind of a new process for policy. I don't know, reviews and maximizing our impact. In terms of other 2026 activities, we have their charter requirements and mandatory duties. I didn't look carefully at this packet, Cancel, I'm assuming, what I asked you to do, I think, is put that, the relevant section from the draft policy manual. And I see we have a memo.
It's on 30. 27.
Yeah, okay. So I mean, this is an attempt to lay out what we actually have to do. And then what we can do. So in building our activities for 26, we need to do what we're required to do. I feel like a broken record on this. One of the things we're required to do is actually, I don't think you took this from the draft policy manual that is coming to the board on Wednesday. This material, did you?
No,
This looks like something old.
yeah, from last,
Okay, cause this, it turns out, isn't fully comprehensive. Whereas what is in the policy manual now is, let me just say, we have a set of things we have to do, the policy manual that's coming to you on Wednesday to approve, list them out. One of them that I just wanna hit on that we simply are not doing is commendations. And I don't think it helps us to not do what we're required to do.
So we
Even,
did have didn't we come up with a process for last year?
we came up with a Brent
Right.
and something, and then Josh, you and somebody else are ready. But I think at some point, it's okay to say, like, we're not getting it done, we have to come up with something, cause it is something we're required to do. So maybe for 2026 as a goal, we can revisit whatever that process was that Randy came up, that Brent came up with. And figure out how so I don't know if we added to every meeting agenda, we put 5 on there. Something, but I think ensuring that our mandatory activities actually get completed should be a goal for 2026. Right?
I thought that we figured out, I don't know whether Brent presented it to us, but I thought that we figured out a process for doing that whereby someone, whether it was staff, someone would call.
It didn't happen. We did come up with.
We came up with a process that I think staff would call the obvious
Right.
possibilities. And then we would, you all don't remember that?
I remember, yeah.
Yes,
And we did have a process.
right, and we weren't gonna do it all at once, we weren't gonna get, this huge packet, we were gonna do it twice a year or quarterly or
I don't know
something.
about that,
But yeah, staff was going to pull it to the top,
to the top,
yeah,
a number that we would look at the full set also, but then staff would do a preliminary review and say, these are the obvious
and so
ones.
we need a calendar, and I don't know if that was something we decided last year too. We need to have a calendar where this month we've gotta do this, and this month we do this. And commendations need to be integrated into our calendar.
Is that count?
It's on 34 and 35.
Okay,
But the commendations are not part of the fiction on this, but it's a good recommendation.
and this table is also from last year's retreat on 34 and 35.
No,
So I think we should put on a PAB agenda, it's too late for next week, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, let's like the next one, can we put on strategic planning follow-up? And let's build our calendar.
Yeah.
With all of our mandatory activities. And the only thing I would say for commendations is, I'm a big AI user, I will just say that. The AI tools have gotten a lot more sophisticated. The first time I tried to do this with AI, it was rough. But I think now it could facilitate, not you
It's not
so.
that hard to read them, or how would that?
Well, here's how it's difficult. It's difficult when you let them pile up. So I don't know how hard it is if we stay on top of it. But I at one point had a staff like this.
Yeah,
It's hard. And there's certain categories for the commendations. It's actually perfect for AI with redactions. So at least to help get you started. So I just, I don't know how backed up we are now. Like, are we back at this?
probably.
Yeah.
I mean, that also seems like it's not difficult. That seems like a perfect assignment for a student too. I mean, to create summaries of things that.
Yes, it's not difficult.
It's not brain surgery.
No.
So,
I would-
again, if we,
Yeah, I would lean toward, just for this triaging, to having every board member read 10 and bring 5 or some number of that, any number of that, and just to get the pile down, just because,
Yeah, no,
for the
it's-
February meeting.
but also it's relative, so the only advantage to doing,
You can use AI first, sorry.
a bigger chunk, and we shouldn't be doing too many, is that it's relative. So
Yeah.
you see, well, out of these people, well, this person really was outstanding,
That's
this
true.
person was okay.
That's true.
So if you don't do a big chunk, you don't see the relative, merits of
That
it.
is a good point.
Okay, well, so what I'm suggesting is the 2026 goal is we do all our mandatory activities.
Right.
We set a calendar, and that's gonna include commendations.
Right.
And it may be that we change the process, so there is not a subcommittee. Or whatever there is now, but it is like a shared responsibility of the entire. Board, and we do a few each meeting, or however we come up with it to like make sure they get done.
Mhm.
Yeah, we had a process recommended, I'm sorry, we lost.
But this process ostensibly is still, we could still use the process.
We
right?
could,
Yeah.
but nobody remembers what
It's,
it
well,
was.
actually, it's in the draft, it's in the draft policy manual that's coming to you on Wednesday.
Oh, perfect.
What is?
The process for
Yeah,
the
it's-
accommodate, the Brent process.
Oh, really?
But I call it the Brent
The
process.
Brent process.
Yes, it's in there. So we can
Okay.
see if it,
Yeah.
still works, makes
Yeah.
sense.
And if you wanna take that on as your.
Well, to analyze Brent's process?
No,
No, to be the czar,
The star
commendations czar.
the commendations are.
Read them all.
Yeah, I don't know if I wanna read them all. I'll certainly be whatever, yeah, you can.
Alright, okay, so if we go back to the agenda. I don't know that we need to go more through the mandatory discretionary items,
Sure.
I just remember. From last year, so. I don't think this document we have in here is fully, complete, but maybe it is. So,
Then we're looking at page 34, 35 again,
yeah,
okay.
but the,
Well,
but the list, but the text is 26 through
yeah,
29.
one thing that I have a question about for. This section, but also, we're gonna talk about it later as well, is what involvement, if any. And how would it be allocated between with our work plan we want to have with the budget review process, because that is happening in 2026.
When
Yeah,
is that?
it starts now with like internal, right, director?
Yeah.
And then in March, there's the first like subcommittee meetings,
Yes.
and then. I believe it goes to council initially once, then it has to go back to them, and so and then it's finalized by June. So potentially that could take up a lot of our time or none of our time. It's a permissive activity. We have to consider our own budget, and I know that Vice Chair last year was really focused on advocating for our own staff member as well, something that wasn't received by the council. And it's something that I think we should think about in terms of what we're interested in for our budget, but also for if we're interested at all in the department's budget, and if we are, then what, and how would we go about reviewing them.
I think we already decided at some point meetings ago that we weren't going to participate in the budget process this year, meaning weigh in. I think that's an action we took. I recommended it go to the operations, whatever the subcommittee is that Randy and I are on. I can't remember what it's called.
Budgets and metrics.
But yeah, maybe the budget committee. So I think we made that decision for this year.
You willing to do that then?
Yeah. I do volunteer, and I've been asking staff to keep me apprised of the timelines, which I think it's like a little bit delayed this year or something, if I recall.
Yeah, they had to shift.
So that's a discretionary activity, but I do think that again, like just from a systems perspective, we don't really have a process whereby, and maybe we do that right now, which discretionary activities do we think we want to undertake in 2026? So budget is one of them. The MOU thing is another one.
Yeah.
Like reviewing the MOUs, we don't have to do it, but we can do it. And so.
Could I ask, is the budget proposal, so what you would be reviewing is the budget proposal put forward by the department?
Yeah,
Okay, is that public or is that confidential?
it should be public because it goes to many, through many
Committees.
committees and iterations.
Okay, so this is something I wanted to bring up before, but I didn't find the slot for it. I really think that we ought to go back to the inclusion of public members of our committees. I think it's really important to have that kind of community involvement. And there might be people out there who are really good at this kind of stuff, budgets, who could help. I mean, we can use all the help that we can get. I don't see anybody nodding.
So what would the process, no, I know.
In the past, with almost every committee we had, unless it was confidential, certainly not complaints, but policy reviews and so forth. Almost every committee, and this is in the charter, included one or two public members. The board members had to outnumber them and they didn't have a vote, but they contributed to the discussion. And there are people out there, I remember Cheryl was really good on budgets. Now she's no longer on the board, but who knows?
What happened with all of that is that the prior mayor.
I know, but I don't think we need to.
No, I was
Yeah.
just so that you understand,
Yeah.
the prior mayor said, well, what we need is a pool of people who have been vetted, who could serve on these committees. But then that never happened, and so we kind of stopped including public members, and we didn't come up with a current process, because under the PRC, before I was even on the PRC, I was a public member of a committee,
Yeah.
and I had to go to the PRC and say,
This is
who I am, this is what I want to, and get appointed officially before the
Right.
board. So that was the process then,
right.
but now we don't have any process, so maybe it's a matter of coming up with a process, right?
Coming up
Because,
with a process and also potential, I mean, anybody who knows people who are expert, or not even experts, but who might wanna use their community voice to participate in these committees, but I was just thinking on the budget one,
right,
there may be people who would be really good at
But it did, the prior process did make sense to have somebody, we don't necessarily know these people, I mean, somebody might know them. But for the person to come before the board and
Yeah,
say,
yeah,
I would like to serve, here's my background.
right.
Well, so my read of the commissioner's manual is that public members are allowed on standing committees of boards and commissions. So that means all of our standing committees, which is the budget and metrics one, whatever that is, we only have a few, the policy reviews. They are not allowed on ad hoc subcommittees. So when we create a committee just to do this particular issue, for the budget discussion, it's kind of neat because we've assigned it to the standing committee. We can add a public member to that committee.
You're sure about that?
Well, that's the commissioner's manual. This is part of like why it's taken so long to do this policy manual for us. Cause we're actually like governed by the commissioner's manual, and then we have other authority from the charter. But that I've never seen anything that's charter does not speak to, oh, you can have public members on your ad hoc committees, whereas
It doesn't say you can't, so then
Our standing rules talk about it.
our standing rules
Talk
talk
about
about public members.
Yes, it does, because I remember they can't outnumber the board members and they don't have a vote and et cetera, et
So
cetera.
they were like
They
ad
don't-
hoc, I mean, these were ad hoc policy committees where we had people, they weren't standing.
Well,
committee.
but if we have a policy committee, any particular policy could have a,
Yeah, and people can come and go, so they don't have to be on there. I think there's a workaround, I'm just saying.
I don't,
That the commissioner's manual does lay out a process for public members, so it's not like we can follow that process.
right, so I didn't wanna take too much time
No,
about that.
but that's a good
On the
goal.
budget thing, there are people out there good with budgets.
Yeah.
I think that's a good goal though for 2026.
Yes,
Is
And it also is public engagement, I mean.
Exactly.
I would say the broader goal would be public engagement, have that be one of the metrics that we, like,
Yeah.
one of the ways.
Now, how many people serve on committees? How many public members on committees?
Sure.
But I don't know how many,
I don't know.
have a public member participation on.
When you mention metric, I don't know what you mean by metrics.
A way to. Maybe it's like a strategy to achieving the goal, yeah. I think one issue with the budget review process that happened 2 years ago, right if I'm wrong, is that there was like a budget subcommittee meeting that we didn't know about. I think that the department presented that, and we weren't able to attend. And so like, it's kind of the issue where we review the department's budget, but by the time that it's presented in a full manner, it's already a big package.
Yeah.
That is difficult to, and then they're like, it's like it's like a general thing. You take out one thing, they're like, oh,
Yeah.
move that. So, and then like there was a whole thing about like, okay, well, what is the overarching goal of your budget, right? That was your question, which that's kind of already baked into an entire budget when it's delivered to the council in the first instance. So I think our first order of action would have to be figuring out, before the subcommittee meetings, what kind of discussions can we be engaged in? I have a feeling that there's gonna be a lot of resistance to us being involved in that process. So maybe it's going to your council members first and asking what they're interested in. Because there will be more opportunity to provide input if there's a council member who has questions that we can provide advice through that. And it's like an informal referral way. Like that's kind of like
And not just for the budget, I mean, I think I like that idea of going to your council member and saying, we're coming up with our priorities for the next year. What things are you interested in? Do you have anything you'd like our board to be looking at? And they might say, I really don't, about it, but it would just be nice to ask them.
Sure. Yeah. So we're talking about feature discretion, but we kind of moved around a little bit, which is fine. Do we want to stay on future discretionary?
Well, I'm just thinking about setting what we're gonna do for 2026.
Yeah.
So we know we have to do the mandatory things, we're gonna have a calendar. What are the permissive things that we are going to do? So we've talked, right, so we said we're doing budget. Then we talked about adding public members, and then coming back to discretionary, like another one that I mentioned is the ability to
Review the MOUs.
review the MOUs, which our standing rules say we will do every February, but the current iteration of the policy manual that you're gonna vote on Wednesday does not require us to do it every year.
Well, we wouldn't need to.
Yeah.
I mean, once we've done it.
So we did take a vote last year to modify that, so.
Oh, yeah, right. So do we think 2026 is a year to focus on MOU?
Well, no, because we reviewed them and we would have to, I mean, the whole thing is a
We
law.
knew all of them? I thought-
No, we made sure that the bigger thing was in compliance, but not the individual ones, so maybe one that we didn't review was the UC MOU, which was like an important one that kind of fell to the wayside once we saw the federal immigration, so maybe we tried to prioritize, right, a couple of them. So there, I think we had the list from last year. I said no too quickly, now that I'm talking it out. There are a few things from the list from last year that fell out. We had an immigration piece, but we also had a UC piece.
Cause there were so many, we just had.
There were so many. Yeah, a lot of them are like really like in the weeds, but there's the network task force that George brought up as well. One thing that's kind of related to the MOUs, but not like it's connected, is I think we have an opportunity to partner with the auditor's office, because one thing that I realized is that the department's contracts with vendors have not been systematically reviewed for compliance with the sanctuary city contracting ordinance. Because there's an initial certification, but they're not reviewed annually.
What does it say, that ordinance?
It specifically restrictions around data sharing with ICE, and like our department has a lot of contracts with different vendors, and I don't know how many of them submit their annual certifications, or if those have been reviewed at all for compliance with that ordinance, and so there's a gap there. Or like there's just like a lack of information there, and that's not even publicly available on the department's website, like the list of vendors there. The contracts are all public, but it's not all in one place. So that's something that I was interested in, and I was talking to a couple people about it, and it seemed to me like there were some questions about certain vendors that have been in the news that it would be surprising to me to see their annual certification, and what that means. So like that's something that I'm interested in personally. If like I kind of skipping forward, but it's kind of related to MOUs because it's about their relationships with other entities.
Do we have authority to dig into that if the department doesn't want us to? Like what would it fall under?
Dig into what?
Like we wanna see a list of everybody that you contract with, which is a public record, so we can get that. And then we're gonna do this assessment of whether or not.
Well, I thought Josh was saying, let's partner with the auditor's office, 'cause the auditor can do it.
Yeah. So like asking the auditor to take that on.
I don't understand why this isn't, so this is an MOU and we're supposed to review the
They're not an MOU
Talk about contract.
contracts. I think I have to think about.
I thought the certification piece of it was part of. So this is not part of MOUs?
No.
It's an ordinance, I guess, that requires.
No, the way like we have visibility into it is, I think in the BPD policy manual, there are things around their contracts with vendors. So it's kind of like,
Oh, it's just their policy.
I mean, it requires them to adhere to the ordinance. And so it's like, it's through that. But I think partnering with auditor's office would be a stronger institutional framework, but that's something that. Obviously there might be things in MOUs that are worth investigating, but I think like there's like a theme right now in the country around immigration. And like making sure our city is actually a sanctuary city, and this is like one area that the city hasn't been looked at yet. People haven't looked at it. So I mean, that's like a just totally discretionary thing that it's not a conversation right now that I was talking with people about.
So what does the certification have to do? Each vendor has to certify what?
That they are not, I mean, like, we should have, when we put this on the agenda, we should have the certification in our agenda, so we're aware of it. But it basically certifies that they're not providing, I don't know, can you pull up the ordinance or the certification? It's basically they're not being a data broker.
Sharing with us.
Data broker and sharing certain data with immigration enforcement.
So this is relative to plot, for example,
Yeah.
right? And so, yeah, I mean, I don't know if you all had a chance to look at the thing that Pitt Saginaw
Yes.
distributed about the FISA warrants. And so, you know, this kind of, because at the surveillance seminar that Hansel and I went to yesterday, where the department presented the public safety technology details and talked about privacy and such, and they talked about how, of course, in our policy, it would require that Flock certify to us that we're the ones who need to give permission for them to share any data and so forth. The thing about the FISA warrants is that the warrants are signed by particular judges, all of whom are appointed by John Roberts, Supreme Court Justice, Chief, and they are secret. And in the FISA law, it prohibits any entity for revealing to whom they've given data and in what way. So that Berkeley, for example, so if Flock received a FISA warrant from the federal government, they would be required to provide the data, and they would not be required to let Berkeley know that they have provided the data. And so it is this back door to getting surveillance data that has been presumably Berkeley's data, but in fact is on Flock platforms. And so and there is something in the policy that says, in the surveillance report, it says that it won't be shared unless required by law, which would mean unless required by a FISA warrant. So this is a big problem for, this is not something we're going to tackle probably, but it's important that, because it's not clear to me that the police department knows about these FISA warrants and what would be required, because the way it was presented yesterday is that we have a secure lock on our data and nobody can see it without our permission. But FISA warrants make that moot. So, and the chief was asked about it, and I think, I don't know.
Yeah.
Didn't seem to be aware. So, so that's the reason I asked you what would have to be certified, because Flock has shared data, so they could certify that they have.
Yeah, we can pull up the certification. I don't think it's in the ordinance. I think it's on Berkeley's
Tracking page,
landing page somewhere.
so it's not that one?
No, it is the ordinance, but I'm asking for the certification.
Oh,
It's a certification that contractors have to submit. It could be related, I don't know enough about it. I hear you, so I read what Kit said, that's
We can defer that,
Yeah.
I mean, we can.
Just a point of,
Yeah, no, it's important.
So that was like my like discretionary activity that I thought of. Obviously we're getting ahead of where we're at, that's fine. But between budget and potentially MOU and that, those are three really big.
Yeah, I think it's enough, and we have, I think maybe a goal that I would offer for 2026 as well is to whittle down our outstanding policy reviews. There's quite a few still. I don't know how to do it, given the few number of board members that we have. And staff, but it might mean just taking some additional ones off of the list. Which is no longer saying that we're gonna do it, because it is at some point when they've been sitting there for 2+ years, it's just kind of meaningless.
Yeah.
So maybe a concrete thing is we'll go through them again. And see if there's further refinement to make on the list.
Mhm.
We have a full list of our current policy reviews.
It's in our agenda packet. It's a combination of subcommittees associated with particular policies that are being reviewed, and then that item that's always in the back. So there's quite a few.
Sorry, I'm one person funny.
Hold it up as well.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's like that.
Oh,
You're in it.
Yeah. I think we can close the off-duty conduct one.
Close them.
The off-duty conduct one.
Oh, it's too bad though. I mean, I was always interested in that, but
I know.
I'm interested in most of them.
Yeah, I think, I mean, like, it's that there, there's a background to that where. There was an incident in Antioch where a Berkeley officer, was allegedly, off duty and allegedly, was yelling racial slurs at a black man in Antioch, I believe, and pulled his gun out. And was using his like color of authority to like harass the guy, allegedly. Say allegedly all the time. And that's what initiated this complaint was to review the standards for off-duty conduct and how that's evaluated also within the department as well. So that's kind of like why this one is important. So so closing it seems like maybe like too big of a step right now, but I want to figure out ways that the EIS system can even capture anything related to off duty, because right now I don't think it is. I don't think they wanted to, so I don't know how else it's about.
off-duty conduct was also one of the categories of things that we made potential policy changes to when we did the downtown texting report.
Yeah,
Those policies we made tweaks to.
yeah,
It's already done what the proposals would be,
Yeah.
but we never pursued it because the whole thing.
But isn't the action that we would just review all of these outstanding policy review requests at a future meeting? Isn't
Yeah,
that?
not to do it right now.
Yeah,
No,
yeah, sorry, I was getting.
yeah, we would like agendize this and go through them,
Right.
and it may be on that one that we say. We're gonna close it out by actually formally advancing
Those,
what's already happened. Yeah.
that's already been done.
Yeah.
Okay.
That sounds good.
Okay. I don't have any other 2026 activities, and we haven't talked at all about community engagement. Can we go back to the agenda for today? Is that what you're on?
It's on this, yeah.
Okay, well, we can keep going, I mean,
Except that we were gonna put under community engagement, getting public's members to serve.
yeah, but should we talk some more about what our community engagement goals are? Cause that is the 2026 goal.
Sounds like that's mostly handled through your office. I mean, not exclusively, but you have.
Which
The community engagement, like the seminars that you've done in the
Yes.
past, with people,
what was the ask? Sorry.
whether that's,
Goals for 2026 around community engagement.
Well, we were trying to have, I was gonna present it at the next meeting, we were trying to see what the conversation was here. I think last time we were a little bit ambitious. And we were, when we made that, we were planning for full, staff, which was 6, but now we have been recently informed that our new baseline is gonna be a 4, so plan for the hiring freezes to continue. So that we're considering that what we can actually do with our family.
also there's ways of doing community engagement that don't involve so much staff time.
Yeah.
Maybe, I mean, Juneteenth is always
Yes.
really well attended by people and we can be visible there. The other place, and we always do, but the other thing that I live near Solano Avenue.
It's just
And they have the Solano
Solano
Stroll.
stroll.
We could have, I mean, people parade down just so that people know that we exist
Yeah.
and be part of that parade.
It's a great idea.
Yeah, there's thousands of people at that
Mhm.
Solano Stroll. That's in September, the
And the department has cable.
first weekend after is it Labor Day? Yeah. Yeah, the department is there.
well, I've always gone in like a different direction with this, which is related to social media, like
Yeah,
we're really missing there. So Hansel, it sounds like the Berkeley engagement is touching on that.
Yes, so that was one of the things that we were consistent with this is social media. And I remember you wanted us to explore which sort of platform would be the best for our audience and doing evidence-based, so that's part of their task, like leveraging the different resources we have and also identifying what speaks to our Berkeley audience.
Okay.
So that is one of the many things, and also that they're tied to the survey, community survey that we want.
And you have timelines for those folks to get back to you.
Yeah, they have, it's under a year, the contract, but we're doing our kickoff meeting next week, so.
And then in terms of like keeping that going, like I've found even in big organizations, it's hard if you don't have dedicated people, like that's a clear part of their job.
Mhm.
So, and I've had really good success outsourcing this. I think it would be helpful for you to get some quotes from like the types of folks that will do social media. You know, they'll develop the content, recommended posts, you just have to review it, then they'll actually post it.
Right.
And track engagement and whatnot. I've seen that come in at like $2,000 a month. And so I don't know what our budget, I mean, I know the budget is bad, but we have had, which you heard in the hard one, quite a healthy budget for like travel and things like that. I personally, as a board member, would really be more than willing to reduce that and pay for a social media, consultant to actually move us forward. But I don't think the board could consider that fully without seeing what the budget looks like. Is there any money for anything besides staff? I don't know. And what the cost would be of bringing somebody on to help with that. So I don't know if you can get quotes. I have a person I could recommend to you. But I don't know if you have other people or you've already gotten quotes in the past. I don't know.
Yeah, no, and that's part of I think the strategy for the 10% reduction. Trying to find out, going through contractor models. But I think right now what I'm most concerned about is not even having the baseline of what I think we need for like parity with internal affairs to have our investigation, so. Yes, there are ways to present that, but I'm really right now very concerned about the admin and the investigator position. So like if finding a way to restore those, whether it be part-time or some sort of compromise.
I thought that was like a dead, I mean, you're still pursuing that, you think that there's. Over there?
Yeah, I think that decision was, when they did the hiring freeze, they kind of. Were like, what do we do now? But I'd like to think that now that we're talking to 2 year cycle, that we can have a more. Concerted conversation about that, just, it was very rushed in my view, that decision.
Why don't I propose that we take a quick break for lunch? Right now, and then we can come back to the community engagement conversation, does that work?
Sure, I mean, I don't know how much more conversation it is, but yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
just so folks know, I have a meeting at 1:15.
So we're ahead of our schedule, we could be potentially done by 1:30. But if we take a quick lunch break, do we go offline for that?
Yeah.
Okay, like we'll come back in, let's say.
15
Yeah, 15 minutes, 12:25.
Okay.
12:25 for everyone online.
Okay, going on.
You look so cool with your sunglasses on.
Okay, we're back on the record here.
I'm really sensitive to the light.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, welcome back. We're gonna resume our conversation for our 2026 planning session. And I think we're gonna transition talking about our individual board member goals, and also the broader strategic goals for the board. And just talk about ways that we can, take concrete actionable steps to achieve those. We were talking about community engagement. But let's pivot for a second. Be really interested to hear what individual board members are interested in and in finishing or taking that. And even if it's just subject matter wise, or institutionally, what points of connections are worth pursuing this year. So that's kind of like what I was thinking about starting with this, and then we can go back into talking about how that relates to PAB goals and metrics as well. Because I think it's important for individual board members to also we're a volunteer body, so it's unless we're engaged, the board won't really be doing much. So I have an open question, but that was my idea for this agenda item.
Well, my goal. The last 2 years has been to finalize our regulations. Have them approved, we have a multi-step process. And as Kitty has reminded our group of internal stakeholders, the regulations do need to come back to this body for final approval.
Yeah.
I agree, at least through the internal process, which we're told will probably be completed by the end of this month. So for the time being, that's what we focus.
I gotta give it more thought. I'm not sure, I'm still kind of figuring out.
Thought you already did the commendations.
Yes, I
Is there any subject matter that you found particularly interesting during the last 6 months? Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah. It's not, it's like, I don't know, can't have an answer, because it's not like there's none that have particularly spoken to me, but it's not that there's any that haven't spoken to me either. I'm just kind of processing it and figuring out where to get more engaged.
Yeah. I mean, I know for me, like my focus last year and this year has been on ensuring that Berkeley remains a sanctuary city. Both on paper, but also in fact. And I think that the national sort of like situation and temperature has made that even more important. And I have seen that, I saw a report actually, I think the director sent a news article. It was about the Dallas oversight body. It was a Dallas oversight body that asked their chief to provide them with alerts whenever ICE requested immigration enforcement collaboration.
Did the
And-
chief agree with it?
No, he said no, but the reason I recognize that was because at NACO, I was the speaker, not a speaker, like a panelist, but like I gave like a long list of things that Berkeley was doing. And a lot of people came up to me afterward to talk about it. And they were very like, engaged and like they wanted to take some of our examples of what we were doing here because we were like reporting requirements as an important thing with the transparency. And one of the people that I spoke to was the Dallas oversight chair. And I talked to her and I was like, look, like this is an important thing and like it's something that it hasn't been asked, like you can put it on the right, you've asked for this and you can try to work with your counsel. Because reporting, like there's a difference between like her whole point was like the council doesn't want to be antagonistic. And I said, well, it's not antagonistic to ask for information, like to be like to ask for reporting requirements so that the community is aware. And she's like, that's a great point, like I'll try. And so I saw it in the news.
Oh.
And I was like, that's awesome. So I think that Berkeley has done a lot of thought about how our city remains a sanctuary city, and I see connections like that around, and so I think it's an important thing.
But we don't have that either, right? You're,
We do.
oh, we do?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
What?
Did we get notified every time ICE asks for cooperation?
Yeah, it was something,
Oh, I didn't know that.
and it's now like I think a 10-day requirement
So how do we get that notice?
that the council gets the notice.
And how do we get it?
The council gives it to us.
And has that happened?
There hasn't been a request,
Also.
but the block searching notice was a notice that we got from the chair, from the chief, after so that's one way that we got a notice. It was not a request from a federal immigration authority, but it was an alert that they got that there was an potentially improper use that they were investigating and they shut it down. But we got that alert from the chief.
Oh.
So we are getting those alerts, and I think I told the chief, I was like, this is an awesome process that other jurisdictions around the country should be followed. So like that was like I think there's a lot of like that's like my goal, and I think that there are ways that we can improve, like I mentioned with the vendor contracts. But that's what I'm focused on.
So I think my goal continues to be around like more internal process things. So infrastructure, because I have found it really hard to plug in when just when my brain works, like I don't feel like there's a good orientation to what we are supposed to do and when we're gonna do it. It always just seemed like just like flowing. And so I think that one of the things Josh and I have tried to work on behind the scenes with Hansel is even tracking where all these items are. So they will come to us, we'll make a decision, we might send a letter, we might send a recommendation, and then we never hear about it again. Or we don't know where it is, or it's been 4 months and like what's happened, or something's been on hold for 6 months, where is it? Even just tracking what all those things are, or all the requests we've made of the department. Where
So are we doing, we're not doing, or are we?
we started something, it's, we have not systematized it. So for me, that's like a goal for this year, because I think it's, again, just thinking about, just institutionalizing what we do and how we do it, and succession planning, like, it just needs more structure.
And that would help for the annual report too, if we have that kind of tracking, just plug stuff in.
Yes, and just help you so you can actually, again, feel effective. If we spent all this time doing X, we sent it to Y, what has happened to it? So, that's kind of, and then obviously I wanna finish the homeless encampment policy recommendations to come back to the PAB. And, anything else, you know, assignments like that, I'll continue to focus on next.
Yeah, I've appreciated the tracking systems that we've put in place, but I agree that we can continue to make that better. It's easy to lose track of things when things come up like ad hoc.
Yeah, and you have to keep track in your brain or your own notes, it's just not, it's tough.
Awesome, well, that's good. I mean, like, one of my other goals is to continue to have the board's impacts be felt. And when the vice chair talked about that. And I think we do that by, you know, many ways, you know, making recommendations that are rooted in, you know, research and the community interests, the public safety interests, but also, in like the shared expertise that we have here, you know? So I think that a lot of my goals last year were to do my best to have that be listened to by the council and to present it in ways that are that they understand, because there's like they speak in the language, you know, they speak in referral languages and like report recommendation languages. It's like it's a very particular system that they have in place that if we don't speak in that language, it's hard for them to really understand what we're proposing. And they're also not in the weeds of our policies. And so I want to continue to provide them with red lines of policies, because that's really where we have a lot of our expertise show, is like we're saying like we're giving you the red line of ways to improve the policy, not just like general principles of all. Like you can provide general principles whatever you want, but here's like our specific recommendations, and that I've found that they're, you know, it's much more effective that way. So that's kind of like my goal, is to continue to do that as well.
Yeah, I mean, when we do report to council and we get some questions or we hear the conversation, it's clear sometimes that they're not in the weeds, as you say, not only in terms of policy, but in terms of our process. Like, how does it work? What's a hearing? You know?
Yeah.
Doing the regulations, it's clear that even people at the table as insiders aren't always clear on how things work, and I don't know how to improve that. But I think it's part and parcel of this concern for getting people to understand what we do.
Yeah.
Because looked at from the outside, people say, well, you know, what are you spending so much time doing? But Leo, your ideas about institutionalizing things would also help with that. But it's just council members don't have an understanding necessarily of how things work internally. Even the charter amendment that was passed is completely confusing about the hearing process. It makes it sound like there's several hearings. But anyway.
So maybe like, I feel like we're turning around here, so I'd be running a corner. I think maybe we have some goals on the table. We had some priorities on the table in terms of the 3 discretionary activities. We kind of talked about community engagement. We didn't like get super far down that path. It wasn't important, like maybe we need to like brainstorm that a little bit more. But I do want us to figure out like some metrics, some like concrete goals, that we can put on paper. And if we can talk about that, I'm really bad with metrics. So like the reason I'm mad is because it's not like we can say, we closed out every policy. Well, I mean, we could say we close out every policy recommendation, referral that you take up within a year. That's a good goal. But it won't necessarily be reflected in this annual year. But
Well, why don't we go back to community engagement first and then go. So I put forth something, pretty specific, which is an ask. So my goal would be that we increase our social media footprint and presence. And then I put forward an ask, which is to get some quotes for outsourcing that function. It sounded, Hansel, like you were a little resistant to that. I didn't quite understand the relationship between that and getting back the administrative and investigator staffing in your mind, because I was thinking that the PAB has some kind of travel budget that I see, that it would come from that, or like conferences and travel. Which I don't think you could use, or unless maybe you're hoping to use that for like part-time administrative support. So maybe, I mean, that's my thing, is I think events are fine, but I think in this day and age, like the way that we would reach the most people is online, and we have to have a strategy and some budget for that. And it would also help to increase our impact, right? Because we mostly have the same cast of people coming here to make public comment. It's very insular right now.
Yeah.
So could you explain that? So maybe I got it wrong, you just seemed a little.
Yeah, I don't know that I was resistant to the thought. I actually do think it's important to come up with some proposals for the council, because they have not been open to getting a full-time staffing for it, which I know you and I have different opinion there, but I do think something is appropriate and necessary. My concern was when we hold the council this season, just knowing the reality of all these different cuts they're making. And again, I was not under the impression that I was already starting with those positions frozen. It was my understanding we're gonna reintroduce them again, and so now we're starting even from a smaller baseline budget. And if I were to ask, or if we were to ask for more money, we need to make it clear to them, like we have core functions, especially us with an office, in order we need to have some sort of ordinance to adjust the workflow, because we are required to take some of these, or to take these investigations, accept them in the stream of fashion to do the investigation, but we're not at a sustainable pace with one investigator, no admin, so.
do you think it would be feasible to add $30,000 line item for a community engagement social media contractor? I mean, is that, because the reason I'm asking is because the mayor at our presentation was the one who was like, come up, emphasize that.
Yeah.
Do something about it.
Yes.
And I think like if we say, here's the money, like we're asking for it, and we're gonna do something about it. So I mean, like you can support it or not.
Yes.
I mean, we can put the question here. I don't know if that's gonna be netting out any of the staffing.
That's what I'm concerned about, that we have to speak it, but, yeah, I think it's wise to, and I think we're gonna get the quote. Last year requested, so to see if 30 is the number, or if we need to adjust that number accordingly.
But the question is, do you have discretion to move around the monies that we do have? In other words, we have money for travel. Could some of that be used? I mean, I don't know. I have no idea.
How does our budget run till 2026?
Yeah,
So what you have right now goes to 2026
to July, right?
to July,
Go through the end of June and then July is the new fiscal.
to the end of June, so it's not, yeah, okay. Well, sorry, kid, board member Calvi had a question.
Yeah, so there's some discretion and mostly when it's salary savings, which we don't have any. But with there's some monies we can move around, some monies we have to ask council for authorization. To make that adjustment.
Okay, so the category for the travel category is called travel. It's not, there's nothing about outreach or,
Yeah, no, we don't have an outreach,
but what's the
I
title?
think it might be training.
We
We
have
have
training.
training line, yeah,
And that's what you use for travel?
yes, part of it, yeah.
Well, couldn't you use training as bringing somebody on to train staff to do this?
I think it's allocated for board member training, because we,
Oh, for us? Oh,
Yeah.
Well, this is just through June or whatever, you're gonna have a new budget, right, for July 1. I guess what I'm saying is, given the realities of the cities. And you're supposed to take a 10% reduction
Right.
on top of already having 2 positions frozen, right?
Yeah, they're not gonna.
So we really just need to look at what that is, right? And then what is remaining, if any, that was allocated for board member anything. And then can we carve out of that some money to support this? That's just the question. I don't think it's like asking council for more.
Oh,
Right.
Yeah, taking the 10% reduction, doing what we need to do, and then using a portion to support this.
getting to ask for 10% off of the current state of the freeze. Or 10%,
It's 10% off the state of the freeze.
Yeah.
They reiterated that in the meeting we were at on the fees.
So it sounds pretty futile to go back and ask for those other positions to be reinstated, isn't it?
Well. We need to look back at the record, because I don't know that the record actually did that, and that might have been an administrative thing that miscommunication, so we're trying to clear that.
so you have increased social media presence.
so this is under what category?
Communication, community engagement, so we have getting public members to participate on standing committees as relevant, whatever. Trying to figure out some resources to support expanded social media footprint. Solano Stroll and Juneteenth.
Is it good?
And there's probably other community events that we are not thinking about that we could also be visible at. Can I go back to the future discretionary activities for one brief moment?
Sure.
So I think one of the jobs that's very important for us as an oversight board is fair and impartial policing. And I don't want that to just fall off the radar, you know. Leo, you've been working with the department on the fair and impartial policing report and strategies and maybe new ways of making sure we're looking at the numbers in the same way and so forth. But I think, I mean, we were asked to monitor that by council some years ago. And so I still continue to think that fair and impartial policing should be an important activity that we do.
Okay, maybe we
However,
combine with the comment about like, we're including the stop traffic data in our annual
Yeah.
report and we never talk about it as a board. That periodically, like twice or 4 times a year, we have on the agenda FIP.
Yeah,
And then we can bring in the stop traffic data
Yeah.
and the other.
And build that into our calendar that we're gonna be.
right. Because when I look at it in the report, it's not just about it, so it's about the demographics of those stops. So that's an important thing for us to be doing.
So I put a periodic review of fair and impartial policing metrics.
Yeah.
It probably also helps to remind council of what they've asked us, because the composition of council changes, and they might not even be aware
That's right.
that we were asked to monitor that,
Mhm.
so.
That would be a very neat thing for us to do, but I agree, it's a good goal. There's a report, that since SFPD instituted their ban on pretextual traffic stops, that their stop data has basically flipped inverse, where before, I think black people were being stopped like twice as much as white people, even though they represent some, and now white people are twice as much as black people after the ban.
Mhm.
Very significant shift within the defined line of this policy change. So that kind of dovetails into this whole question we have around like whether the traffic safety plan of the department is actually
Right.
doing the thing that they say it's doing. And I think that fits within this bullet as well, because no one is evaluating whether
Right.
whether their stated goals are actually achieving mitigating
Well, that's what that
implicit bias.
report that I worked
That's
on.
he does.
That's what we did that, we
Yeah.
did. But ongoingly, we should touch base with that again.
Okay, so we have two big goals, and any other ideas?
What do you mean, big goals?
I have increased community engagement, periodic review of fair and impartial policing measures. So those are the two.
Under what category? I'm sorry. go ahead.
We had other goals for 2026.
This is 2026 goals, that's what we're talking about?
Yeah, but we had
Yeah, we have
others.
several.
Well, I mean, like things to, the discretionary activity goals.
Then we have like encourage PAB members to communicate with their appointing bodies. Modify the process for the investigation timeline to better accommodate timeframes. We've identified a number through the discussion. But I think we were on community engagement,
Yeah.
and then we went to this FIP. But now I think we're ready to go to metrics. If we want to we could kind of pull together a consolidated list of what we think we've said we want to do this year. And then we could also look at the metrics from last time, which are somewhere in the packet, right? The metrics for last time, that we drafted last year but never actually adopted, if I recall. They're agnostic to what our, can you go to that?
Yeah.
They're agnostic to what our specific annual goals might be. They're much more kind of process oriented.
Where are you looking at this?
It's page 12 of the PDF. I don't know if it's a page of the packet. Yeah, 12.
This is from 2024.
Oh, okay.
Is that a typo?
I don't know. I thought we did it last year, but maybe we did it in 2024. I don't know.
This was a draft by the board, not a direction ones. Then we
Yeah, but we never actually like adopted these. So this is basically, these are kind of, I call these process metrics. I think they're important. They do have some proposed metrics on community engagement, and you can see them.
I remember.
Basically, how much time are we doing things on time?
Mhm.
And then trying to measure effectiveness or impact, right? Just like two components. Did we get it done on time? Did we have any impact? This is one, I think it's really important for bodies like ours to have something like this. I don't know if these are the right ones. And then another activity would be, well, here's what we said we're gonna do this year. Do we wanna develop like specific metrics on that, like ensuring that we, are genuinely a sanctuary city? Well, what does that look like? I don't know, better infrastructure around tracking outstanding items. Actually, measure if that's done. So these are two kind of different levels of metrics.
Well, some are easier to quantify than others.
Yeah, but like these that are here, again, are agnostic to whatever it is you said your priority is this year. It's more like, are the basics, like, are you getting the stuff done that you're supposed to do?
I mean, I think I'm not sure exactly how we want to tackle that, or tackle this, but it seems like for some of our goals, that this kind of framework makes sense, just kind of like processy metrics, like we commit to doing X, whatever, 3 times a year or twice a year or every meeting or something like that. And that's something that you can track and we can revisit. Whatever, every meeting or every other meeting, and it could just be a standing thing. But it seems like it's different for some of the goals, like you're saying, with regards to like the sanctuary city matter.
I mean, we can say quarterly submission of accommodations again. Right?
You mean what's on here?
I'm just reiterating, what's on there. About accommodations.
So I think with this document, as you can see, like, we never really got to how are we gonna measure effectiveness.
Right.
We have something on the personnel investigations, which I think is good. We put that a couple years in the annual report. And so I think it's the other stuff we have really struggled with. So we could kind of focus on that and then maybe talk about a process for some of those 2026 specific activities. How would we come up with metrics for those, which is not gonna be this. Because like for this, if we kind of like this, let's keep it, try to just improve it. I think the big thing to focus on is effectiveness. Do we want to even try to measure that?
I remember one reason why we didn't adopt this was under effectiveness of personnel complaint investigations. I remember that I didn't think, and maybe other people didn't think, that percent agreement with the chief was something that is an aspirational goal. I mean, for me, like, I think that our goal should be to provide reasoned, evidence-based decisions grounded in Berkeley police policy. We have no control over how the chief, my goal is not to conform to her understanding.
Well, that's why I would hate to say, no, we're not effective, because
Right.
I mean, it makes us look bad, as long as we're doing that, as long as we're working hard and we're providing our reasoned analysis and doing things on time. But we have no control over the chief or the council, so to say, I mean, that comes back to relevance, maybe it's relevant, but how much control do we have over that,
I agree. I think it's bad to have metrics over things you can't control.
But the timely completion of things,
Right,
Totally.
that's
very important.
absolutely.
I think that the statistics are important to track, but not for our performance.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
No, yeah, we should keep track of that.
But we can control our timing. So I just think in terms of metrics, we've had a couple issues with timeliness, and we need to ensure that that's smooth over, but we also need a process to figure out how to be more timely. And like, I think the statistical evaluation we talked about at the beginning will help that, right? But I remember that comment that I had about this last time. So same feeling now.
It seems like there's two categories. One is internal process, like timeliness and that sort of thing, and how many we did. And the other is impact or result or something, because you know, we can complete all those policy reviews. Percent of recommendations to city council agreed to. That's a different,
Right, I like result better than effectiveness, because
Result.
effective has kind of this,
right,
you know, judgmental component,
Right.
and result is just more objective, what happened.
right.
I was just gonna make a quick note that I think it's also important to have synergy with council though, because from time to time it does. That metric surfaces, like, in one of the presentations, they asked me, oh, well, you guys only sustained one case, right? And I'm like, well, is that the metric that we're using here? And so like, if the body says, no, that's not a way to assess our work, does council understand that? So.
I guess I'm confused about,
The council is pointing to the fact that we only sustained one allegation in 2024.
is that true?
Or
That we
there was
or that
there was
it was
a
sustained
statistic
ultimately.
that it was sustained ultimately.
Well, that's,
That it was
those are two
sustained.
different.
Sorry, that it was sustained.
Okay.
And that was that only one council member.
Yeah.
Not everyone.
As us being effective,
No,
or as what?
as evidence that the department does a good job.
Yeah.
That was what the quote was.
Oh, okay,
Oh,
Which has nothing to do with
okay.
as evidence that there is no misconduct.
What I think is we're like nascent in this process, that we should just maybe strike effectiveness and track
Yes.
results for each of these, but I would say this just to give a bit of a counter view. I think that if we had sufficient relevance and reach in the community, it would create pressure so that the chief could not always disregard our recommendations on personnel investigations, and the council couldn't so often blow past us on policy. So I do think there's a way to become more effective through the concerted efforts of our board and staff, but it is like a strategic long game, and it's not happening now. So, and we're not, you know, we haven't like institutionalized metrics and tracking anything. So I think maybe we, everywhere where it says effectiveness, we strike it and we just put result. So that, you know, we're relevant, we're tracking the result. And otherwise we're focused on timeliness and then numbers of people at our meetings, numbers of engagement. I think that's fine to start with.
Sure.
Yeah,
I'm good with that.
okay, so I can easily modify this.
I also want to include in these metrics the number of recommendations that we make to council, substantive recommendations. Which it's not really a press release, it's more like we send letters to council recommending certain policy changes or whatever reviews, you know.
And should we do, I mean, and press releases per se, I don't even know how those work anymore, but maybe we should be providing broader public notice of things we're doing. Rather than
That
just,
comes back to our social media,
Right.
yeah, because the office does do press releases, I've seen them. It's so much easier to reach people online.
So how would that work exactly?
The press release,
No, social media use.
how would it work?
Well, I mean, you have to have people interested to begin with to log in to it or to look at what we're doing, right?
Yeah, so there's ways
It's
to
not
like
we-
increase engagement, like you can pay to boost the police accountability board's LinkedIn page or Instagram or whatever platforms we decide on. I wouldn't think it would only be LinkedIn, that's gonna reach a certain audience in the community, but not another audience, right?
Right.
You can pay to boost it, so it like shows up in your profile, and your goals there are to get people to follow. And once they follow, then whatever we post is gonna come up in the feed.
Mhm.
So you don't have to log, it's just anytime you're in LinkedIn, it's gonna come up. So I think there's like a lot, there's people that do this full time and are really good at it.
we might wanna just send stuff to Berkeley side too, because a lot of people read Berkeley side. And I don't know what the current practice is, because I guess I've seen a press release, but I haven't seen lots of press releases. And I think it would be helpful, since we are doing all this important work, sending things to council, maybe if we just. I mean, I'm not sure how it would work, because it would need to be a separate document, some paragraph with an attachment or something, but.
And they have to agree to print it, because unless it's,
Right, they don't have to agree to print it, but at least they're getting it.
yeah,
So. I would think that might, Hansel, do you have any thoughts about that?
do they take up on your press releases?
They, sometimes they do, yeah.
Cause it just seems like Berkeley side, I mean, they're looking for content and.
It's happened this year though, right? I think Josh, you were interviewed, there's been a number of things.
No, I know, I'm just saying, but if we also include the more positive things, I mean, they like the, juicier gossipy stuff. But if we included, a report to council with our recommendations, they might pick up on that too, so. I think that would be helpful.
So do we, I mean, I think this is kind of clear cut, modifying this what's here, but do we wanna go back to some of the things we said we wanna do this year and think about if, whether or not there's any specific metrics we wanna adopt?
Do we make sure we all have the same list?
Yeah, we should. Do you feel like you've taken good notes?
Yeah, I've taken lots of notes, I'm looking at different pages, okay, one of the things, these are not in order of priority. Strengthen relationships with other oversight bodies, perhaps having quarterly meetings.
Do you wanna, should we stop after each one and try and?
Oh, yeah, we could do it.
Well, I think we're trying right now to see if we have one comprehensive list of.
Oh, okay, very good.
I'm just checking it against my notes.
Yeah. And so this is under, some of these things I have under 2026 goals and also an annual report, but it was to ask the city manager and the council to help institutionalize processes to integrate.
Our reviews
Yeah,
prior to.
and then I said, no, we have to go to the rules committee, agenda committee, and then noting that. Ideally, we would collaborate with the department and have a unified work product for the council, but if not, we should submit our own, so, that's, I think you already have that one. Discuss stock data in advance of the annual report. Revisit the commendation process. Build out a calendar to ensure that our mandatory duties are met, but I think also build in the discretionary things we're agreeing on. Permissive items being the budget, MOUs. And I think we should pick a few MOUs again. Oh, and tracking of past council recommendations, and we already had that, just tracking of the things that we've done in the past.
Did we say we were gonna do MOUs this year, or was it your idea, Josh, to do this other thing on contracts?
I don't know enough, we haven't seen any ways to know if they're really thinking of.
Okay.
We should probably look at them now.
Yeah. I mean. Yeah, it's worth analyzing them.
Just be safe, if nothing jumps out at us. And we already recommend that council amend the ordinance so it doesn't require annual review.
Yeah,
Oh,
and that happened, right?
Yeah.
it did happen. Oh, okay. Refine a list of policy reviews to see if there's, take another look at that list. Community engagement, we already talked about that. Juneteenth, Sony Soul, social media. Have possibly reduced travel budget or play around with that, moving things around. I also said ask council to encourage the chief to provide policies to us before implementation, but that's kind of related to that other thing. Ask council to encourage the chief to attend our meetings. I don't know if we want to include that or not.
I have that too.
Oh, okay. Okay, so a lot. Oh, and then based on what Kitty was saying, be more explicit about our recommendations to council or asks in the reports. Right, so kind of interesting. I think we also need to achieve full board. You know, we still don't, and that should be something we ask council for, right? I mean, it's crazy that we,
I mean, the charter
Too many
amendment
vacancies.
says that the commission or the board shall have 9 members. And we or council really has been out of compliance because we've never had 9 members. From July 2021, there's never been a full board. And so the people need to nominate who have, I mean, some of them haven't ever nominated. Some of the council members.
and we obviously have no control over it, but we can just remind
But
them.
we can point out that the charter mandates
Right.
9 people.
Right.
Josh, how did you hear about the board and you were interested?
I was reached out to,
Who is your name?
Rashi.
Rashi, and she reached out to you.
So I'm gonna leave in 5 minutes, so I
Yeah.
just wanna read if you think you're done.
Oh, I put something about academics. I like the idea of continuing the,
Sure.
you know, to strengthen relationship with select academics and however you want to phrase it.
Okay, so I just have encouraged PAB members to communicate with their appointing council members. Modified the investigation timeline process to better reflect the compressed timelines.
Can I just say they're appointers, and others as appropriate. I mean, it doesn't need to be
Right, at a
confined,
minimum, it should be,
doesn't need to be confined to that one person.
Okay, and then I don't know, Josh, this thing of partnering with the auditor's office or recommending a review of BPD contracts, is that a goal for 2026?
I mean, it's something that I'm interested in. I don't know if
keep in mind, we will look back on this next year to see whose goals were accomplished, so.
yeah.
Okay, well, I'll leave, so other than that, I don't have anything that you didn't have.
Okay.
That's not like an individual personal board member.
So,
So,
anybody else have anything? Other goals?
I think what I can do is email this maybe to you, Saeed.
Mhm.
And then you could put it up. And you guys, if you want to take the time, or we can do this at a meeting. Is just go through and say, is this appropriate for metrics? Like I would say some things like we're gonna improve our reports, how we write our reports. My gut is like, we don't need a metric around it. Let's just do it. Commendations, we already have a metric. Let's move on. Other things we may want to adopt metrics on specific to the goal.
Well, but that seems like a lot of it, either you do it or you don't, like if we're gonna build a calendar with all. You know, the mandatory duties, the timeline and discretionary. Right, we don't have these metrics, about either we,
Well, the metric could be, did you get it done?
well, it's not the metric for all, I mean, I guess that's a metric, sure.
Or like saying we're gonna build better infrastructure to track this out, or a whole new process. I would say like this whole new process where we want to weigh in on things earlier.
Yeah.
That should be something we track, like, did we actually get it?
I think that's a big. And that's the other thing, we wanna prioritize these, because some of these are obviously more important than others, but that seems like a huge goal to get. To help institutionalize, have the city manager and council institutionalize some process that integrates us. Into the decision making earlier on, I mean, to me, that would be like a top priority, and that would be. A big thing to do.
I mean, I want to be able to respond effectively to council on referrals.
So
So,
that's a big time issue too, though.
yeah, I mean, when they do refer, I want to be able to respond to that.
Right, but I mean, that's the timeliness that, which we're given the referral.
Yeah,
That's the problem today, right? That we don't have enough notice.
So I'm emailing you this. Yeah, cause I have to go, I'm so sorry, but
so I work closely on.
yeah, whatever you guys wanna do, but I emailed Saeed our combined.
You know, what are we doing with this list?
Well, it would be great for you to like just go through it and make notes, like.
But I mean, after that, what do we, like, didn't last year we provided something during our next meeting?
Yeah, so I wouldn't be this week, but I was gonna suggest that Josh and I work at something similar to what we did after last year.
Oh.
Where we say, here's what we said, what are our goals, here's an updated thing of metrics, maybe this time we actually have the board adopt the metrics. Yeah,
Sure.
okay. Let's see what's
Okay.
happening out here.
Okay, so there's things for us to do on this, or do we?
Well, I think.
Yeah.
We could decide to try to attach metrics to these, or we could punt to like a future meeting to do it. I think that's action.
And it could have been worth, is it over? Yeah, hard to say. I don't know, anyway, okay. I'll see you on Wednesday.
Well, is it worth generalizing these more and then? Okay.
But also like some's low hanging fruit and some are
Right.
big ticket items, I mean, it might be nice to categorize them that would be good.
Just a quick check. Is it a rally or is it just one person?
And over now in Berkeley.
Can't even tell what it was.
I get at least two these. Well, maybe if you send us around to people, we could group them into categories.
Yeah. And we'll prioritize them.
Broader categories and
Yeah.
then. Because some of them are pretty specific.
Yeah, my suggestion would be to send this around and have a little bit of homework before we bring it back.
Yeah.
We can have another discussion, not this meeting, but you know. February. You can send your thoughts to Saeed and the director.
And thoughts are just how we. How, if we're triaging, like where it falls on. Degrees of importance, and then also like how we would decide to measure.
Yeah, so I think ideally we'd have an order of importance. And ideally we'd have like 5 or 6, not like 30. And then we'd have metrics for each of them. So if there's ways to group these into bigger categories.
Like the top 6 goals.
Yeah, to group them into categories and then have them be individual, like these be part of the metrics, or to have metrics attach them.
Yeah. We'll say it's the kind of reconciliation process. Maybe we could potentially have how many people are on the board now? 6 different documents.
Well, you send it to the director and then we'll come up with a proposal for the 2 meetings from now.
Okay.
So are we done or?
I feel like we're in a good place.
Okay.
Does anyone have any
Kind of makes sense too.
additional thoughts that we need to fill now?
No.
Okay,
Can we leave this stuff here?
we have another public comment period.
Oh.
But thank you all for conversation today. I thought it was very effective and good. We got through a lot of things pretty quickly too. I mean, we got a lot of them to. Hopefully, director, this helps for the annual report writing process too.
Yeah.
Did you have anything you want to add before we go to the public comment director?
No, I will try to synergize what I got here for our office, sort of work plan or things that we want to get done this year, but obviously in conjunction with your office.
Yeah. Good. Okay, let's go to agenda item 5, public comment.
All right, Chair, at this time, there are no hands raised on the Zoom and there is no speakers.
Let's see if there's, give it a second.
Yeah, did you
didn't announce the public comment session before.
Oh,
you gotta announce it, just
okay, so we are open for public comment now.
for members of the public that are tuned in. If you are interested in providing public comment to the board, please raise your hand icon on Zoom.
At this time, the hands raised.
And no hands raised, we will go to agenda item 6, adjournment. I get the motion.
I am so moved.
Great, okay, thank you all.
Thanks.
Josh, can you pull back 1 minute?